She grabbed the wrong hand. The wrong hand was attached to Lee Hyun-suk, and Lee Hyun-suk did not let go. Ariana Prescott, 30 years old, black, beautiful, slender, walked into the Ember Room in Koreatown wearing an emerald silk crepe dress and $40,000 of debt that was not hers. She was there to negotiate. Travis Mercer was there to collect. Travis had the messy short crop, the worn leather jacket, the broken nose, and a laminated ledger with her name at the top. He grabbed her wrist near the humidor. She pulled back. She said the sentence she had rehearsed on the drive over. "My boyfriend is going to pay it." Then she reached behind her, blind, and caught the nearest hand in the room. The hand was warm. The hand had a heavy onyx ring on the pinky. The hand belonged to the man everyone in that lounge had been pretending not to look at, the man with the Korean dragon inked along the left side of his neck, disappearing under a black Egyptian cotton collar. Lee Hyun-suk laced his fingers through hers. He did not look at her. He looked at Travis. 3 capos watched from the leather chairs. Travis dropped to his knees before anyone told him to, and that was the easy part. Because in the code of the Korean mafia, a public claim witnessed by 3 captains is irreversible, and Ariana had just made herself the property of the quietest man in the room. But what she did with the next 30 days. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The emerald jade silk crept across Ariana Prescott's knees as she stepped out of the black cab onto the wet Koreatown pavement, and the neon sign of the Ember Room bled red down her cheekbone like a warning she chose to ignore. She counted her breaths, 4 in, 6 out. That was the trick her grandmother taught her when the world tilted, and the world had been tilting for 11 days now. Ever since the first envelope slid under her apartment door in Harlem with a photo of her mother's front porch stapled to a demand for $40,000. $40,000 she did not owe. $40,000 a man named Travis Mercer swore she co-signed for the night she left him. The night she loaded 2 suitcases and a violin case into a rideshare while he slept off bourbon and rage on the leather couch he stole from her apartment. She smoothed the fitted long sleeves of her midi dress. The center part of her jet black silk press caught the sodium light. Below the waist, in long glossy layers, her hair moved like water when she walked. Small gold studs at her ears, a delicate gold bracelet on her right wrist. A minimalist black clutch pressed under her left arm like a shield made of nothing. She had dressed for a boardroom because a boardroom was the only room she knew how to survive. The Ember Room was not a boardroom. 2 Korean men in charcoal suits stood at the door. Neither smiled, neither frowned. The taller one glanced at her face, then at the clutch, then stepped aside without a word, as if her arrival had already been logged in a ledger she could not read. Inside, the air was warm and slow, layered with the honeyed smoke of Dominican cigars and something older underneath, something like leather and clove. Low amber lamps hung on brass chains. The floor was polished walnut. Green velvet booths lined the walls in half circles, each one occupied by men who did not look up when she passed and by women who did. She kept her chin level. Her stiletto sandals struck the walnut in a steady rhythm. She had rehearsed the sentence for 3 days. "I am here to speak with whoever holds the paper on Travis Mercer." That was it. 12 words. 12 words that were supposed to buy her 30 minutes of civility, a chance to prove the signature on the loan was forged, a chance to walk out with her mother's porch still unwatched. She did not make it to the bar. He came in from her blind side, from the shadow between 2 velvet columns, and the smell hit her before the shape did. Old bourbon, old leather, the cheap silver polish he used on the chain around his neck. Travis Mercer stepped into her path in a worn black leather jacket, dark t-shirt stretched tight over a slightly protruding belly, dark jeans, heavy steel-toed boots that scuffed on the walnut without apology. His hair was a dark brown, messy short crop, unwashed. His square jaw jutted. His nose, broken in a fight 3 years ago, sat crooked under restless blue-gray eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. Small scars pinned his cheeks like a map of every bad decision he had ever committed against another human body. He grinned. That was the worst part. He grinned like he had been waiting. "Baby," he said. "You came?" Ariana did not step back. Stepping back was a language he understood too well. She held her ground on the polished wood, her clutch tight under her arm, and she made her voice small enough to sound reasonable and loud enough to carry. I came to speak with the lender, not with you. Yeah? Travis rolled his shoulders inside the leather jacket. You must be new here. I am the lender's collector, Redline crew, been on payroll 6 months. Every dime you owe passes through this hand first. He held up his right hand and wiggled the fingers. The silver chain at his neck caught the amber light. So sit, have a drink, let us talk about the porch. The porch. He said it like a lover's nickname. He said it like he had already driven past it. Her spine straightened one notch. She did not let her face show him what her stomach did. There is no debt, Travis. Her voice stayed level. You signed my name. That is fraud in the state of New York, and it is fraud here. Here, Travis said, and he smiled with the top row of his teeth. We do not care about New York. He took a step closer. The scent of him thickened. She felt the walnut floor under her heels, the velvet air on her wrists, the 12 rehearsed words dissolving somewhere behind her teeth. Around them, the low conversations of the lounge did not stop. They dimmed. Men in the booths turned their faces toward her by half degrees, the way wolves turn toward the sound of a wounded thing, not to help, not to strike, just to note the geometry. Travis reached for her wrist. His fingers closed around her right forearm just above the delicate gold bracelet. Not hard enough to bruise yet, hard enough to promise. His thumb pressed the inside of her wrist where the pulse lived, and she felt him count it, felt him grin wider when the count went up. Come on, he said. The booth is warm. Let us make this civilized. Ariana looked down at his hand on her arm. She looked at the room. She saw at the far back of the lounge, in the deepest booth of green velvet, a man watching, not staring, watching. He sat alone on the curved bench with one arm laid along the top of the leather, a lit cigar between 2 fingers of his left hand, a small crystal glass of something amber untouched on the table before him. He was tall, even-seated, broad in the shoulders, narrow at the waist. His posture was the posture of a man who had never in his life been asked to leave a room. He wore a premium black Egyptian cotton dress shirt, perfectly fitted, the top 2 buttons open. In the gap of the open collar, along the left side of his neck, a fine line black tattoo climbed out from under the fabric. A stylized Korean dragon in ink so precise it looked drawn by a single held breath. The dragon's tail disappeared into the shirt. Its head reached almost to his jaw. His hair was jet black, combed back and slightly to the side, a classic side part with a slick, aristocratic finish. His face was oval, sculpted, the cheekbones high, the jaw a straight, quiet line, the nose clean. His eyes were dark, almond-shaped, and cold in a way that was not cruel, only accurate. On his right pinky, a heavy black onyx ring. On his left wrist, under the shirt cuff, the discreet flash of a platinum Swiss watch. He was looking at her. Only at her, not at Travis, at her. For one full second, the Ember Room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when a single audience of one decides to pay attention. She felt his eyes on the exact place Travis was holding her wrist. She felt him note the pressure of the thumb. She felt him note her breath. Then his eyes moved, unhurried, up to her face. He did not nod. He did not smile. He simply looked at her the way a chess player looks at a piece that has walked itself onto the board without being invited, and he waited to see what the piece would do next. Ariana turned her face back to Travis. Let go of my arm. After we talk. Now. Travis laughed. He tightened his fingers. The gold bracelet dug into the underside of her wrist. Somewhere in the booths behind him, a man exhaled cigar smoke in a long, slow plume, and the plume drifted between her and the door. She understood in that plume that she was not going to walk out of the Ember Room the way she walked in. She understood 2 other things at the same time. She understood that the man in the back booth had not looked away, and she understood that Travis Mercer, for all his bulk, for all his silver chain and his stolen leather jacket, did not know the man in the back booth was there. Ariana Prescott had spent 11 days losing. 11 days of screenshots of her mother's porch. 11 days of a number that did not exist crawling across her phone at 3 a.m. 11 days of a voice on an unknown line saying, "We know where your sister eats lunch." She had come to the Ember Room to lose one last time in a civilized way. She decided, in the space between one breath and the next, to lose differently. She jerked her right arm, not to escape, to turn. She twisted her wrist inside Travis's grip so that her palm faced up, and in the same motion she stepped one full stride to her left, toward the back of the lounge, toward the deepest booth, toward the man with the dragon at his neck. Travis, off balance for a half second, followed her by reflex, his boots scuffing. She raised her voice, not a shout, a tone, the tone a woman uses in a public place when she wants a witness. "There you are, baby. I was looking for you." Travis blinked. Ariana kept walking, 3 strides, 4. Her stiletto struck the walnut like small, clean bells. The green velvet boots on either side turned toward her fully now. The cigar smoke thinned. She could feel Travis stumbling 1 step behind her, still holding her forearm, dragged along by his own confusion. She reached the last booth. She stopped at the edge of the polished walnut table. She looked down at the man with the dragon tattoo. His dark almond eyes lifted to hers. He set the cigar carefully in the crystal ashtray. He did not speak. Ariana lifted her left hand still free of Travis. She reached across the table, slow enough that any man in the room could stop her, fast enough that no man in the room did, and she laid her fingers over the back of his left hand where it rested along the top of the leather bench. Her hand was small on his, her deep brown skin against the paler, warm ivory of his knuckles. The gold of her bracelet caught the lamp. The black onyx of his ring, on the other hand, sat quietly at the edge of her vision. She smiled at him. She smiled the way a woman smiles at a man she has kissed 1,000 times. "My boyfriend," she said, and her voice was a bell for the whole room, "is going to pay whatever this man says I owe." The Ember Room stopped breathing. Travis Mercer stopped breathing. For a single held second, the only sound in the lounge was the small hiss of a lamp filament and the far-off scrape of a chair against walnut in a booth no one was watching. Ariana did not look at Travis. She did not look at the booths. She kept her eyes on the dark almond eyes of the man whose hand she had claimed, and she let him see, in the 4 inches between their faces, the fear she had been swallowing for 11 days. She let him see the porch. She let him see the sister at lunch. She let him see the forged signature and the 3 in the morning and the 12 rehearsed words that were never going to be enough. She let him see it all in one full breath. Then she waited. He could pull his hand away. He could laugh. He could stand up, tower over her at his full 1.88 m, and hand her back to Travis like a parcel labeled wrong address. She had gambled her whole life on a stranger's next second, and she did not know his name. His dark almond eyes moved once over her face, over the emerald jade dress, over the small gold studs, over the delicate bracelet cutting into her wrist under Travis's thumb. His eyes went to Travis's hand. They stayed there for one calm beat. Then the man in the back booth lifted his left hand under hers, turned it slowly, and threaded his fingers between her fingers. He interlaced them, fully, deliberately, palm to palm, knuckle to knuckle. The platinum watch flashed once as his wrist rotated. His grip was warm and dry and absolutely still, and Oriana felt a shock go up her forearm that had nothing to do with fear. He held her hand. He kept holding it. Then, without lifting his eyes from Travis Mercer, he spoke for the first time. His voice was low, unhurried, and it carried the way a knife carries when a chef lays it flat on a board. 40,000, he said. "Is that the number?" The Korean accent was there, faint, precise. The English was better than most men in the room. Travis's mouth opened, his grip on Ariana's right forearm loosened by a fraction he did not choose. "Who?" Travis said, and then he stopped, because from the booths around them, 3 men in dark suits had risen at once, without hurry, without noise, and had positioned themselves in a loose triangle around the walnut table without ever quite standing between anyone and the door. Travis's eyes darted. He counted. He recounted. "Who?" he said again, and his voice was smaller. "Who are you?" The man with the dragon tattoo did not answer that question. He answered a different one. "The paper on Miss Prescott," he said, "is mine now." His fingers tightened gently around Ariana's. 40,000, he continued, "in cash, tonight, from my house to your house, on one condition." Travis swallowed. The silver chain at his neck bobbed. What condition?" "That when I hand you the envelope," the man said, "you kneel, here, on my floor, and you thank Miss Prescott by her name, and then you walk out of Koreatown, and you do not come back." The Ember Room breathed again. Once, all at the same time. Ariana felt Travis's hand fall off her wrist entirely. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes down on her own fingers laced through the fingers of a man whose name she still did not know. His thumb moved, once, along the delicate gold bracelet where Travis had bruised the skin under it. Not a caress, a measurement. He was taking inventory of the damage. She felt her knees, for the first time since the cab, want to shake. She did not let them. Travis Mercer, who had once thrown a bottle at her head in a kitchen in Harlem, who had signed her name to a debt she did not owe, who had photographed her mother's front porch and mailed it to her like a threat wrapped in a wedding invitation, took one step back on the polished walnut. Then slowly, as if his knees were being lowered by a rope he could not see, Travis Mercer went down, both knees, on the walnut under the amber lamps. In front of every velvet booth in the Ember Room, his messy brown crop bent forward, the steel toes of his boots scraped the wood once. He did not look up. "Say her name," the man in the booth said gently. Travis's throat worked. "Ariana," he said. "Ariana Prescott." "Thank her." "Thank you." "For what?" A long, shaking pause. "For letting me walk out." "Good." The man with the dragon tattoo did not raise his voice at any point. He did not need to. He lifted his right hand, the one with the heavy black onyx ring, and made a single small motion with 2 fingers, and one of the 3 men in dark suits stepped forward, took Travis Mercer by the collar of his stolen leather jacket, and lifted him to his feet as easily as lifting a coat off a hook. Travis was walked, not dragged, toward a side door Ariana had not noticed until that moment. A door in the walnut paneling behind the bar. The door opened without a sound. Travis went through it. The door closed. The lounge exhaled, and the low conversations, which had never quite stopped, folded themselves back into the amber air as if nothing had occurred. Ariana was left standing at the edge of the polished table in her emerald jade dress, with her small gold studs and her delicate gold bracelet and her jet black silk press falling below her waist in long layers. Her left hand was still in his. His fingers were still laced through her fingers. He had not let go. He looked up at her from the green velvet booth. The dragon at his neck sat still. His dark almond eyes were no longer on the room. They were on her face, and they were reading it the way a scholar reads a page in a language he happens to know. "Sit," he said. It was not a command. It was almost a courtesy. He shifted along the leather bench to make room beside him, on his left side, on the side of the dragon. She hesitated only long enough to be seen hesitating. Then she lowered herself onto the green velvet, and her stiletto sandals came off the walnut, and her knees pressed together under the emerald silk crepe, and she realized she was still holding the black clutch under her right arm, as if it were the last piece of the woman she had walked in as. He waited until she was settled. Then, without releasing her hand, he reached with his free hand to the small crystal glass of amber liquor before him, lifted it, and set it down closer to her side of the table. A small gesture, a silent offering. He did not ask her to drink. Around them, 3 men in dark suits reassembled themselves into the shape of a lounge that had never been interrupted. A waiter in a black vest appeared with a fresh crystal ashtray. 2 of the velvet booths across the walnut resumed their low conversations in Korean without turning their heads. The lamp filament hissed. The cigar in the ashtray, half smoked, laid a slow ribbon of smoke into the amber air. Ariana Prescott, who 20 minutes earlier had stepped out of a cab prepared to lose everything in a civilized way, sat in the last booth of the Ember Room with her hand laced into the hand of a stranger, and she understood, without being told, that the 12 rehearsed words she had brought with her would not be needed tonight. She understood something else, too. The man beside her had not once, in the entire performance, told her his name. He had not asked hers. He had heard it once from Travis Mercer's mouth on Travis Mercer's knees, and that, apparently, had been enough. He turned his head slowly and looked at her again in profile. The fine-lined dragon at his neck rose and fell once with his breath. His platinum watch caught the lamp. The heavy onyx ring on his right pinky rested quiet on the leather. "Miss Prescott," he said. His voice was still low, still unhurried. "In 2 minutes, you and I will walk out of the front door of this room together. My car is at the curb. You will get into the car. We will drive 20 blocks. In the car, I will explain to you what you have just done, and then, in a room that is quiet, you will make one decision." Ariana kept her eyes on their laced fingers on the polished walnut. "What decision?" "Whether the story you told this room," he said, "stays true for 30 days. She lifted her eyes. She looked at the dragon at his neck. She looked at the calm accuracy in his dark almond eyes. She looked at the 3 men in dark suits who had already, without any signal she could see, begun moving toward the front of the lounge to clear a path. She thought of the porch. She thought of the sister at lunch. She thought of $40,000 that did not exist, and of a man in a stolen leather jacket being walked through a door that had not been there a moment before. 30 days, she said quietly to no one. The man with the dragon at his neck did not answer. He simply squeezed her hand once, gently, the way one squeezes a hand that has never before been held in that room, and then he stood and he did not let go. And Ariana Prescott, in her emerald jade dress, in her stiletto sandals, in her jet black silk press falling below her waist, rose beside him on legs that did not quite belong to her yet. The ember room parted before them. She walked out on the arm of a stranger whose name she still did not know, and the sodium light on the wet Koreatown pavement caught for one bright second on the delicate gold bracelet where a bruise had already begun to bloom under the skin. She did not look back at the door. Somewhere behind the walnut paneling, behind the door she had not noticed until it opened, Travis Mercer was learning a new arithmetic. Somewhere in front of her, at the curb, a black armored sedan was waiting with its rear passenger door already open. Somewhere between those two doors, in the narrow strip of neon and rain, Ariana Prescott was learning the first small syllable of a language she had not known she was going to speak. His hand was still laced into hers. She did not pull it away. Inside the sedan, the air smelled of clean leather and something faintly cedar. The windows were dark to the point of black. A driver in a charcoal suit sat behind the wheel with both gloved hands at 10 and 2. Between the front and rear cabin, a thick pane of tinted glass rose halfway, giving the illusion of privacy without any of its substance. Ariana felt her clutch slide onto her lap, her knees pressed together under the emerald silk crepe. The man beside her still had not let go of her hand. He did not, she noticed, sit close. He kept a careful 8 inches of leather between his thigh and hers. Only their fingers touched, and only because she had put her hand there. The rest of him remained composed on his side of the seat like a man who understood, at a very old level, that a woman had just used him and that using her back within the same hour would be a kind of vulgarity he did not permit himself. The sedan pulled from the curb without sound. Neon slid across the tinted glass in slow red and green bars. She watched a Korean bakery pass, a 24-hour karaoke sign, a pharmacy with its metal shutter half down. Her reflection in the window was a woman she almost recognized. Deep brown skin, golden luminosity along the cheekbone, jet black silk press falling below the waist, a small tremble at the corner of the mouth that she had not, until now, given permission to appear. She swallowed it. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. "In there." He was looking straight ahead at the raised glass, at the neon on the other side of it. His profile was very still. The dragon at the left side of his neck rose and fell once. "I did not have to," he agreed. He turned his face toward her. "But you did have to. So I did." She looked down at their fingers on the leather between them, the gold of her bracelet, the platinum of his watch, the heavy black onyx of the ring on the hand he was not holding her with. The bruise at her wrist was already dark under the skin. He noticed her noticing. "That will heal in 4 days," he said, and his voice was low and factual. "The other thing you did tonight will not heal at all. Miss Prescott, look at me." She lifted her eyes. His dark almond eyes held hers with a calm that was not warm and was not cold. It was accurate. It was the look of a man about to hand her a map of a country she had already crossed the border of. "In 20 minutes, he said, "I will explain to you what a public claim, spoken by a black woman in an emerald dress, in a room with 3 of my captains, means in this city. I will explain what it cannot be taken back from. I will explain 30 days. I will explain what happens on the 31st. He paused. "And I will explain," he said, "my name." The armored sedan turned north off the neon into a quieter street where the street lamps stood taller and further apart. Ariana did not answer. She watched the streetlights slide across the black glass and counted her breaths the way her mother had taught her before recitals. 4 in, 4 held, 4 out. The city she thought she knew had rearranged itself in the last 20 minutes. Ember Room was 3 blocks behind them, and it already felt like a country she had left. Hyunsuk sat with his shoulder almost touching hers. He did not lean. He did not fill space. He simply existed in the seat with a stillness that made the leather feel warmer where his arm rested near her sleeve. His fingers were still laced through hers. She had not asked him to keep them there. He had not offered. It had simply not ended. In the lounge, it had been a shield. In the car, it was becoming a sentence she had not finished reading. "You can take your hand back," he said quietly. She looked down at their fingers. Her hand was smaller, browner, softer at the knuckles. His hand was longer, paler at the base of the fingers, harder where the tendon showed. The onyx ring on his pinky caught a passing headlight and threw a tiny black star across her wrist. If I take it back, she said, does the debt come back with it? No. Then explain. He did not turn his head. He watched the street the way a man watches a chessboard he has already solved 4 moves ahead. In our world, there is a language older than money. Money is only the last translation of it. Tonight, in front of 3 captains from 3 families, you spoke to me in that older language. You said, this man is mine, he will pay for me. I answered in the same language. I said, yes, she is mine, the debt is mine. 3 men witnessed it. They will each tell 2 men. By morning, it will have been said 70 times in 70 rooms. It was a lie. It does not matter. She turned her face toward him. He still did not turn his. It does not matter. In the world you left when you walked into Ember Room, a lie matters because it can be corrected. In the world you walked into, a public claim is not a lie or a truth. It is a fact of ownership. The moment I closed my fingers around yours in front of King and Moon and Old Beck, the debt stopped being Redline's problem. It became my property, and you, in the exact same moment, became the reason I claimed it. Her mouth was dry. So I am the reason. You are the reason. For how long? That, he said, is what we will discuss. The sedan slid past a shuttered dry cleaner. A cat crossed the sidewalk and stopped to stare at its reflection in the window. Ariana envied the cat for a full second. My name is Lee Hyun-seok, he said. Some people call me Boss Lee. Some people call me Sajangnim. You will call me Hyun-seok. Why? Because a woman who claims a man as her boyfriend, even in a lie, and then keeps calling him by his title, is a woman who has not yet decided if she is inside the room or outside the room. I need you inside the room. She let out a small breath that was almost a laugh. There was no joy in it. You need. Yes? That is a strange word from a man like you. It is a precise word. I do not use imprecise words in cars. The driver, silent behind smoke glass, turned the sedan onto a wider avenue. The buildings grew taller. A tower with a jade-green light on its roof rose ahead of them like a signal fire in a fog only they could see. Ariana! She looked at him. He was finally looking back. Up close, his eyes were not black. They were a very deep brown with a colder ring at the edge of the iris, the color of river ice in the shadow of a bridge. You are wearing an emerald dress, he said. Silk crepe, long sleeves, a discreet slit, the color of a stone that in my family means protection and long life. I noticed it before I noticed your face. Do you know why? No? Because when I saw the color enter the lounge, I thought, someone has sent me a message. Then Travis Mercer stood up, and I understood the message was not for me, it was for you. And you were walking into it wearing the wrong dress in the wrong room on the wrong night, and still you did not run. I did not know how. You knew how. You chose not to. There is a difference. A woman who does not know how to run does not stand at a table with 3 captains and lift her chin. She apologizes. You did not apologize. You bargained. Badly, but you bargained. She looked down at their laced hands again. She flexed her fingers experimentally. He did not tighten his grip. He also did not loosen it. What are your terms? She said. 30 days. 30 days of what? 30 days of a public performance. You will be seen with me. You will attend 3 dinners, 1 wedding, 1 funeral, and 1 charity event where the mayor of Los Angeles will pretend not to know who I am. You will live in a residence I will provide. You will not return to your apartment in Mid-Wilshire. You will not contact Travis Mercer. You will not contact your sister until I have arranged the correct way for her to be told. At the end of 30 days, if you wish to leave, you will leave with a new name, a clean passport, and enough money that you will not have to think about money for the rest of your life. If you wish to stay, we will speak again. And if I say no right now, then I will still absorb the debt because a public claim cannot be unmade. I will drive you to your apartment. Tomorrow morning, 3 of my men will move your belongings to a hotel of your choosing under a name that is not yours. Within a week, I will have you outside the country under a legend I will build for you. You will never see me again. But you will also never be inside my protection again, and Redline, when they recover from tonight, and they will remember your face. So the answer to the question you're actually asking is no. You cannot walk back into your old life tonight. That door closed when you touched my hand. She did not speak for a long time. The sedan slid under a green light. The driver did not accelerate. He did not brake. He drove the way a metronome keeps time. You said 30 days of a performance. Yes. Define performance. His mouth moved a fraction. It was not a smile. It was the memory of one. In front of my people, my captains, my sister, the staff of the residence, and any public setting we share, you will behave as a woman who has chosen this man. You will not need to touch me constantly. You will need to look at me the way a woman looks at a man whose bed she has been in. Once, when we arrive tonight, we will walk into the residence together, and my sister will be at the top of the stairs and she will study you. That look, from you to me, will decide how the next 30 days are lived. In private, in the rooms that are only ours, nothing is required of you. I will not touch you unless you ask. I will not enter a room where you sleep. The performance ends at the door of your suite. And what do you get? A face. A face. For 30 days, a public face for a war I'm about to fight in a way I would prefer not to fight it. The families are watching me for weakness. A boss who has not chosen a woman by 35 is a boss whose successor is not yet named. A boss whose successor is not yet named is a boss whose captains begin to imagine themselves in his chair. Tonight, without planning it, you gave me a way to close a question I had been leaving open. That is worth more than 40,000 American dollars. It is worth more than 400,000. So the debt, in my accounting, is already paid. What I am buying with these 30 days is time. Time to do what? Time to end a man you have never heard of, he said, in a way that his own soldiers will call justice. She did not ask who. She understood, sitting there in the emerald dress with her fingers still laced through his, that the correct move was to not yet know. She filed the sentence in a place inside her chest where she was already filing many sentences. And Travis Mercer will kneel again, he said, many times in many rooms until he is no longer a shape a room recognizes. That is not a 30-day project. That is a Tuesday. She looked away. Her reflection in the black window looked back at her with an expression she did not recognize. The woman in the glass had a straighter spine than she remembered owning. One more question, she said. Yes. When you laced your fingers through mine in the lounge, before you said the words, why did you do the hand first? He was quiet for a moment. The tower with the buzz jade light was closer now. She could see the private drive curving up under a canopy of trees she did not remember planting themselves in the middle of Koreatown. Because, he said, a hand is a promise a mouth cannot take back. If I had spoken first, Kang would have watched my mouth. I did not want him watching my mouth. I wanted him watching my hand. And I wanted you to feel the claim before you heard it. If you had pulled your hand away in that second, I would have let you. The lounge would have ended differently. Travis would have taken you out through the service door. I would have been sipping the Yamazaki I was sipping. You did not pull your hand away. I could not. You could. You did not. That is the sentence that will matter later in a room I have not yet built when someone asks me to prove that you chose this. She realized her fingers had, at some point in the last minute, closed slightly around his. She did not remember doing it. She did not undo it. The sedan turned off the avenue. A gate opened without anyone speaking. The car climbed a short private drive lined with low lanterns the color of warm butter. At the top of the drive, a courtyard opened around a black stone fountain that made almost no sound. The house behind the fountain was not the house she had expected. It was lower, longer, older, a modern reinterpretation of a Korean hanok in dark timber and pale plaster, its roofline rising in two soft curves against the night sky. Warm light spilled from tall paper-covered windows. A staff of 4 stood in a quiet line at the door. Do not react to the house, he said before the car stopped. Walk in as if you have walked in 100 times. I have not. Tonight you have. The driver came around. He opened her door on her side first. That surprised her. In every other car she had ever ridden in with a man of any importance, the man's door had opened first. She stepped out. The emerald silk moved with her. Her stiletto found the smooth stone of the courtyard and held. Hyun-suk came around the back of the car in 3 unhurried steps. He did not offer his arm. He offered his hand. She took it. They walked toward the door together. A woman stood at the top of the shallow entry stairs. She was perhaps 40. Her hair was cut short and sharp at the jaw. She wore a slate gray silk blouse tucked into wide black trousers and no jewelry at all except a single thin gold chain at her throat. Her face was Hyun-suk's face rearranged into a woman, the same jaw, the same still eyes. Nuna, Hyun-suk said without slowing. Hyun-ah, the woman answered. Her eyes were already on Ariana. They did not blink. They studied the dress, the shoes, the earrings, the clutch, the hand held. They arrived at Ariana's face. They stayed there. Ariana remembered the instruction. She looked up at Hyun-suk. She did not force a smile. She let the corner of her mouth soften the way it softened once in a museum in Chicago when a painting she had not expected to move her had moved her. She held the look for exactly the length of a breath. Then she looked at the woman on the stairs and dipped her head in a small, warm, unhurried greeting. The woman's mouth did something that was not a smile either, but it was an acknowledgement. "Sun-hee," Hyun-suk said, "this is Ariana Prescott." "Ariana," Sun-hee said. Her English was almost accentless. "Welcome to the house." "Thank you," Ariana said. Her own voice surprised her. It was steady. Sun-hee's eyes moved to their joined hands. They moved back to Ariana's face. "You are wearing green." "Yes." "On the night my brother brought you home." "Yes." "Then someone in your family at some point prayed for you tonight." Ariana did not know what to say to that. She said nothing. It turned out to be the right answer. Sun-hee turned without another word and walked into the house. She expected them to follow. They did. Inside, the ceilings were higher than she had guessed from the courtyard. The floors were dark polished wood with pale runners of raw silk laid down the long central hall. Paper lanterns glowed in wall recesses. A staff woman in a simple black dress came forward with a small tray. On the tray sat a single warm folded towel. Ariana understood without being told that she was meant to accept it. She did. She wiped her hands. She returned the towel. The staff woman bowed and disappeared through a door that opened and closed without a sound. Sun-hee led them to a sitting room off the main hall. She did not sit. Hyun-suk did not sit. Ariana did not sit. "Consigliere is in the study," Sun-hee said to her brother. "He has read the report from Ember Room. He would like 10 minutes. He will have 5. He will take 10 and be grateful." Hyun-suk almost smiled. Almost. He let go of Ariana's hand for the first time in 22 minutes. Her palm felt suddenly cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. "Nuna will take you to your rooms," he said to her. "You will meet the rest of the household in the morning. Sleep if you can. Do not sleep if you cannot. Either is acceptable. Tomorrow at 10 we will begin." "Begin what?" "Everything." He inclined his head a fraction, the smallest bow she had ever seen a man give a woman. Then he was gone down the hall in the direction of a door that was slightly darker than the others. Sun-hee watched her brother go. Then she turned to Ariana. Her face had a new expression on it. It was not warmth. It was not coldness. It was the expression of a woman doing arithmetic. "Come." They climbed a wide, shallow staircase of the same dark wood. On the second floor, a long corridor stretched toward a set of double doors at the far end. Sun-hee did not walk toward those doors. She stopped at a nearer door on the right, opened it, and stood aside. "Your rooms!" Ariana stepped in. The suite was larger than her apartment. A sitting area in cream and pale jade, a low writing desk, a dressing area behind a paper screen. Beyond another door, a bedroom she could see the corner of, with a bed made in white linen so crisp it looked ironed onto the mattress. Fresh magnolia branches sat in a tall celadon vase on the desk. A phone, unfamiliar model, sat next to the vase, its screen dark. "The phone is yours," Sun-hee said. "It has 3 numbers in it. Mine, his, the house. It will not call anyone else until I add them." "Understood." "The card in the desk drawer has no limit. Do not test that sentence. It is true. Use it as you would use your own money if you had never been afraid of running out. That is a skill you will need to learn quickly." "Understood." "The closet has been filled while we spoke downstairs. Nothing in your size will surprise you. The sizes were sent ahead by a woman in the lounge tonight who noticed your dress before you noticed her. That woman works for me." Ariana looked at Sun-hee. Sun-hee looked back. "Ariana, yes. My brother has never brought a woman into this house. Not once. I want you to hold that sentence in your mouth tonight and understand why you're standing inside. I'm not asking you to love him. I'm not asking you to fear him. I'm asking you to be careful of him, because for reasons I do not yet understand, tonight he was careful of you. Men like my brother are not careful. When they become careful, the women near them either become empresses or become gravestones. There is very little middle. I understand. I do not think you do, but you will. Sleep well." Sun-hee stepped back into the corridor. She closed the door behind her. Her footsteps went down the corridor without hurrying and without lingering, the footsteps of a woman who had walked that corridor 10,000 times. Ariana stood alone in the middle of the sitting room. The silence was different from any silence she had ever stood inside. It was not empty. It was maintained. Somewhere in the house a clock ticked. Somewhere further away a door closed with the soft finality of a door closing at the end of a working day in a place where working days ended at civilized hours. She could hear the fountain in the courtyard faintly, through glass she could not see. She walked to the desk. She opened the drawer. The card was black. It had no bank name on it. It had her name embossed across the front in a font she did not recognize. Ariana Prescott. Exactly as she wrote it, exactly as it appeared on her real driver's license. She closed the drawer. She walked into the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed. She did not lie down. She looked at her feet in the black stiletto sandals and at her hands folded in her lap and at the emerald hem of the dress that had 4 hours ago been a dress she had chosen to feel powerful in on a night she had needed all the power she could borrow. She lifted her right hand. She looked at the palm. The heat of his hand was gone from it. The memory of the heat was not. She turned the hand over and looked at the back of it. Her skin was smooth. There was no mark. Nothing on the outside of her had changed. Nothing on the outside of her would change tomorrow either, and still, she understood. Sitting alone in a room in a house on a street she could not have named an hour ago, that she had crossed a border. The border had a name. She had walked across it saying the name of a man she had never met. She stood up. She unclasped the small gold bracelet. She set it on the nightstand. She unhooked the small gold studs. She set them next to the bracelet. She stepped out of the stilettos and set them side by side under the edge of the bed. She unzipped the emerald dress and let it fall. She hung it on a padded hanger on the back of the closet door because she could not think of what else to do with it. In the closet, a robe was waiting. Ivory silk, her size. She put it on. She walked back to the sitting room. She turned off 2 of the 3 lamps. She left 1 lamp on beside the low writing desk because the dark, tonight, felt like a room she should not enter alone. She sat down on the edge of the cream sofa. She realized she had not yet cried. She waited to see if she was going to. She did not. Instead, an image came, unbidden, of Travis on his knees in front of a low table in a lounge that smelled of oak and expensive rain, of the way his mouth had moved before any sound came out, of the way, for a single second before he understood what was happening, he had looked at her instead of at Hyun-suk, and his eyes had asked her something she had spent 3 years refusing to ask herself. The question was, "Are you doing this to me?" And her eyes, without her permission, had answered, "Yes, and I am not sorry." The next image was of Hyun-suk's hand, specifically the way his thumb in the sedan at one point had shifted a 1/4 of an inch across the back of her hand. Not a stroke, not a caress, an adjustment, as if her hand, resting in his, had been a small living thing whose position he was correcting for its own comfort without asking it. She noticed she was breathing more slowly than she had been breathing an hour ago. She noticed she was not afraid. She noticed the absence of fear was, itself, the most frightening thing that had happened to her all night. She stood up. She walked to the tall window at the far side of the sitting room. She parted the linen curtain with 1 finger. Below her, the courtyard glowed gold under its lanterns. The black sedan was gone. A second, smaller car sat in its place, its driver leaning against the hood with his arms folded, looking not at the house but out toward the gate, patient as a stone. A movement to the right caught her eye. 2 men in dark suits walked slowly along the far wall of the garden. They did not speak to each other. They did not look at the house. They watched the wall. One of them held something in his right hand that she chose not to identify. The other spoke, briefly, into his cuff, then nodded once, and they kept walking. She let the curtain fall. She turned back into the room. The single lamp made a warm circle of light on the writing desk. Inside that circle, the magnolia branches leaned slightly toward the warmth, their pale petals half open, their scent so faint she could almost mistake it for the smell of clean paper. She walked to the desk. She sat down in the low chair. She picked up the phone. It woke to her face without asking her to touch it. The screen showed 3 contacts exactly as Sunhee had said. His name was written in the center of the list. Not Boss Lee, not Lee Hyun-suk, just Hyun-suk. She did not call. She set the phone down. She folded her hands in her lap on top of the ivory silk. She looked at the magnolia branches. She thought about the woman on the stairs and the sentence about the color green. She thought about her mother, who had died 4 years ago, and who had indeed, at some point, prayed for her tonight and probably every night for a long time before that. She whispered, "Mama," very quietly into the room, and she was surprised that the room did not swallow the word. It held it. The way a well-made room holds a small sound and gives it back changed. Then she stood up, walked into the bedroom, turned back the crisp white linen, and, still in the ivory robe, lay down on top of the sheets without getting under them. She did not sleep. She did not try to. She looked at the ceiling, which was high and pale and crossed by a single dark beam of old wood, and she listened to the house. Somewhere far below her, a door opened. Two men speaking Korean, low, quick. A pause, a single sentence in a lower voice she recognized. Then the door closed. She realized, lying there, that she had already begun listening for his voice. She closed her eyes. She did not sleep, but she rested. And the resting in a bed in a house in a country she had entered by accident 4 hours ago was already the resting of a woman who had, without saying it out loud, agreed to stay for 30 days. Outside her window, in the courtyard she could no longer see, the small fountain kept making almost no sound at all. The first photograph landed in her inbox at 6:17 in the morning. Ariana was already awake. She had been awake since 5:15, sitting at the small writing desk near the window, drinking black tea from a thin white cup, watching the sky over Koreatown turn from charcoal to the color of old bruises. The suite was quiet in the way only very expensive rooms are quiet. No street noise, no hallway footsteps, just the faint hum of climate control and the occasional soft click of the refrigerator in the pantry adjusting itself. Her phone buzzed once, a short buzz, just enough. She picked it up, expecting nothing important, a newsletter, a reminder from the pharmacy. Something ordinary. It was not ordinary. The subject line was in Korean and English at once. Anonymous sender. No name. The preview showed a thumbnail that made her stomach fold in on itself before her brain even processed what she was looking at. It was her. Or something that looked like her. She tapped the message open. The image expanded across her screen. A woman in a green dress, the same shade as the one she had worn to the Ember Room, kneeling on a bare mattress in a dim room. The angle was wrong, the lighting was wrong, the face was almost right, and that was worse than being nothing like her. Almost. The hair was slightly off, a shade too warm, the parting on the wrong side. The eyes had that faint plastic gleam that gave these things away when you knew to look. Behind the woman, on the wall, someone had spray painted a crude tag she recognized from Travis's World. Redline. In red. Dripping. Ariana set the cup down very carefully. She did not want to hear it rattle against the saucer. She opened the next message, and the next. 4 images total, all variations. All of them her face, or almost her face, or a stitched together approximation of her face, dropped onto bodies doing things she had never done, in places she had never been, wearing versions of that emerald dress that were slightly wrong every time. A story was being told in these pictures. The story was that Ariana Prescott was cheap, that she had been passed around, that the man who had walked her out of the Ember Room on his arm had picked up secondhand goods and did not know it yet. The 5th message contained a link. She did not click it. She did not need to. She could already see in her mind the timeline of exactly how this would unfold across the day. She got up from the desk. She walked to the bathroom, closed the door softly, and threw up the tea into the porcelain sink. Then she rinsed her mouth, wiped her face with a cool cloth, and looked at herself in the mirror for a long moment. Her hair was pulled back in a low, loose knot. No makeup. A silk robe the color of old ivory. She looked, she thought, like a woman who had been dropped into someone else's life and told to hold still. She did not cry. She did not have room for it. She walked back to the writing desk, picked up the phone, and forwarded all 5 messages to the number Jiwoo had programmed in for her the day she arrived. The label said only H. The reply came in under 90 seconds. 2 words. Stay in. She sat back down. She poured a second cup of tea. Her hand shook once and then decided not to. By 7:30, the pictures were on 3 Koreatown gossip channels she had never heard of, but which apparently had followings measured in the hundreds of thousands. By 8, they were on a Los Angeles nightlife blog that translated everything into English. By 8:45, a screenshot had made it into a group chat that reached into the fashion district. Jiwoo brought her a plate of cut fruit at 9 and did not mention any of it, which told Ariana that Jiwoo already knew. Eat something, Jiwoo said. She set down the plate. Pear, melon, a small pile of strawberries. You will not think clearly on an empty stomach. Where is he? Downstairs. He's on the phone. With who? Jiwoo hesitated, only a fraction. With everyone. She left. Ariana ate 1 slice of pear. It tasted like paper. She ate another anyway. At 10:15, the door opened and Hyunsuk came in without knocking, which he had never done before. He was in the black shirt again. Sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms. No jacket. His hair was slightly less perfect than usual, as if he had run a hand through it once and forgotten to fix it. On the left side of his neck, the fine-line dragon showed clean against his skin in the morning light. He did not speak first. He looked at her. He looked at the plate. He looked at the phone face down on the desk. "You saw them," she said. "I saw them. All of them. All of them." She waited. She had prepared in the last 3 hours several small speeches. She had prepared a version of herself who would be angry, and a version who would be cold, and a version who would ask quietly to please be sent home now, that 30 days was too long, that a week had been enough. None of them came out. What came out was, it was him. "I know. You already know. I have known since 7:20. He crossed the room to the window. He did not sit. He stood with his back half to her, looking out at the courtyard, at the small fountain she still could not see. His hands were loose at his sides. The heavy onyx ring caught a piece of morning light and threw it briefly against the wall. "Ariana." He said her name slowly, the way he always said it, as if he were still deciding what it meant. "I need you to understand something before this day continues." "Okay. I'm not going to ask you what you want done." She looked up. "If I ask you," he said, still facing the window, "you will say something merciful. You will say, let him alone. You will say, make him take the pictures down and go. That will be your first instinct because you were raised well. And I would honor it because I said in that car that I would not make you sit in blood." He paused. "But it will be the wrong instinct, and you would spend the next 20 years of your life understanding slowly why it was wrong." She said nothing. "So I am going to do this for you without asking. And you are going to sit in this suite and eat that fruit and drink that tea and let Jiwoo bring you a book from the library, and by tonight the pictures will be gone from every screen in this city, and by tomorrow Travis Mercer will have left Los Angeles, and by the day after that he will not be a name anyone in the zip code is willing to speak out loud." "Will he be alive?" Hyunsuk turned then. Slowly, his face was very still. "That," he said, "depends entirely on him." She held his eyes. She thought about Travis at 19, in the bleachers behind her high school, holding a warm can of soda against her cheek where a girl had slapped her. She thought about Travis at 24 in the kitchen of the first apartment they shared, laughing while a pot boiled over. She thought about Travis at 28 at 4 in the morning, standing in a doorway with a hand raised. She thought about Travis at 32, sending pictures of a woman who was almost her to strangers on the internet for money. She thought about all 4 Travises at once. She let them stand in a row inside her head, then she let them dissolve. "Do what you need to do," she said. He nodded once. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "Ariana." "Yes. Thank you for not asking." Then he was gone. She did not know what happened in the hours after that, not in the details. She was told later, in fragments, by Jiwoo and by the driver, and by a small comment Sunhee made 3 nights afterward while pouring wine. She built the day out of these fragments the way an archaeologist builds a broken vase. She was never sure she had all the pieces in the right places. She was never sure she wanted to. She knew that at 11:15, a man in a plain gray suit walked into the offices of the Koreatown Gossip Channel that had posted first, spoke to the owner for 11 minutes without raising his voice, and left. By noon, the post was gone. The account had also posted a short apology in Korean, which nobody read, and had then gone dark for what would turn out to be the rest of the year. She knew that at 12:40, a woman with an expensive handbag walked into the offices of the Nightlife blog, sat across from the editor, opened her handbag, took out a folder, slid it across the desk, and waited. The editor read the folder for 6 minutes. He closed the folder. He picked up his phone. Every image was down inside the hour. She knew that a courier delivered an unmarked envelope to a small tattoo shop on Western Avenue where 2 Red Line associates were known to drink coffee in the mornings. She did not know what was in the envelope. She knew that by 2 in the afternoon, the shop had a hand-lettered sign on the door reading "Closed Family Emergency," and that the sign stayed up for 6 weeks. She knew, because Jiwoo told her, that at 3 o'clock, a black car pulled up outside a 2-bedroom apartment in North Hollywood where Travis had been staying with a woman he had been telling people was his fiancée. 2 men in dark coats got out. They knocked. They were let in. They were inside for 18 minutes. When they left, they took Travis with them, seated in the middle of the back seat, hands loose on his knees, staring straight ahead. He did not look like a man being kidnapped. He looked like a man being reminded of something he had once agreed to. She knew that at 4:30, the car stopped in an empty lot behind a shuttered restaurant off Vermont. She knew that Hyunsuk was already there. She knew this because he told her later in 3 sentences without embellishment. He said, "I met him. I let him choose. He chose to leave." That was all he said. She did not ask what the other choice had been. She never asked. She knew that by 7 that evening, every image was gone from every server she could search. She knew that by 9, the story had begun to be replaced on all of those gossip channels with a different story in which Travis Mercer had been a scammer working alone, had fabricated the pictures out of jealousy, and had already fled Los Angeles ahead of civil suits from 3 unnamed parties. The story had a life of its own within hours. By morning, it was the only version anyone remembered. She knew that at some point that afternoon, Mr. Hahn had come by to check on her. He had sat in the small sitting room and made no reference at all to the pictures. He had spoken about the weather, about a book his wife was reading. He had stayed exactly 20 minutes and left her a small paper bag of ginger candy because Jiwoo had mentioned her stomach was unsettled. She had unwrapped one of the candies after he left and held it in her mouth until it dissolved, and then she had cried, for the first time since the images arrived, quietly into a linen napkin for about 4 minutes, and then she had washed her face and gone back to the book. Hyun-suk came back to the suite at 9:40 in the evening. He looked exactly the same as he had that morning, same shirt, same posture. His hair was combed back into perfection again. He did not smell like anything but his own cologne, faint, cedar, and something colder. His hands were clean. His cuffs were clean. She looked without meaning to at his knuckles. They were clean. "It is done," he said. "I know." "You know what part?" "The part I need to know." He nodded. He crossed to the small bar cart and poured himself 2 fingers of something amber. He poured her a small glass of the white she had liked at dinner 2 nights before without asking and set it on the desk near her hand. "He is on a bus," he said. "He will get off it in Arizona. He has been given a name and a number and told that the name and number belong to a person in a small town in Nevada who will help him start something new if he does not talk about Los Angeles for the rest of his life. And if he talks about Los Angeles, then the number will stop working and the name will stop working and the small town in Nevada will begin to feel very small." "Understood." He sat down finally, on the low couch across from the desk. He set the drink on the little marble table between them and did not immediately touch it. "Ariana." "Yes. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly because everything after tonight depends on it." She turned in the chair to face him. She folded her hands in her lap, the wine glass she did not touch. "Ask." How did that feel? She thought about the question. She thought about it for longer than she expected. She thought about the pictures. She thought about the fruit going cold on the plate. She thought about the sound of the door closing that morning after he left to go do whatever he had gone to do. She thought about the paper bag of ginger candy. She thought about the small satisfaction, undeniable and hot and strange, of knowing that the man who had held a warm can of soda against her cheek and later raised his hand at her in a doorway was on a bus going east. "Honestly," she said, "honestly." It felt like being covered. He did not smile. He did not move. He waited. "Like standing under a roof," she said, "in a storm I did not know was a storm until it stopped raining on me." "Yes. I have never been covered before." "I know. I did not know it was possible." "I know. Is that dangerous?" "Yes. Very. Yes." She picked up the wine glass finally. She took a small sip. She set it back down. "Thank you," she said. "Do not thank me for that." "For what then?" He looked at her a long moment. In the lamplight, the dragon on his neck looked like a line drawn in wet ink, still capable of running. "Thank me," he said, "the day you can leave." The days that followed were quieter than she had thought they would be. Not because nothing happened. A great deal happened, but it happened around her rather than to her, and she began slowly to understand the shape of what it meant to live inside a house whose walls were made of other people's fear. She went to a fitting on Rodeo Drive with Sun-hee on a Tuesday afternoon, and the boutique closed for them. Not because anyone had asked. Because a call had been made 2 blocks away, and by the time the car pulled up, the front door was already being locked from the inside, and the manager was standing at the entrance with a small bow and 3 glasses of champagne on a silver tray. Sun-hee did not react to this. Ariana did, silently, in the private way she was learning to react to everything. She had a driver named Min Jun who never spoke unless spoken to, and who, she learned by accident on a Saturday, had a small daughter he FaceTimed every night at 8 while he waited in the car. She began to bring him coffee some mornings. He accepted it the first time with a small startled bow, and by the 3rd time simply nodded and set it in the cup holder. It was a warmer kind of silence. She had, most surprisingly, a library, 2 floors up from the suite, a long room lined floor to ceiling with books in Korean and English and French, with 2 deep leather chairs and a small brass lamp. Jiwoo showed it to her on the 5th day. "Mr. Lee thought you might like this room." Ariana walked the length of it once slowly, running her fingers along the spines, and then she sat in one of the leather chairs and did not read anything for almost an hour. She simply sat in a room full of books that a man she was pretending to belong to had built for a woman he had not yet met. There were dinners, long conversations after, over the last of the wine at the small table near the window in his study. He asked her about her childhood outside Chicago, about her mother, the nurse, about her older brother who had gone into the Marines and come back different. He listened the way he did everything else, completely. Occasionally, he would ask one further question that made her realize he had understood not only what she said, but what she had chosen not to say. He told her, in return, small things. About a grandmother in Busan who had raised him from 6 to 10. About the first time he had crossed the Pacific alone at 17 with a name he had not been born with. About the man who had taught him this business. And the year that man had spent dying in a hospital in Seoul while Hyun-suk sat next to him, every night reading aloud from Korean poetry the man could no longer see the pages of. He did not tell her what had happened after that man died. She understood these were doors he was showing her closed so that she would know they existed. On the 14th night, halfway through the 30 days, he took her to a small rooftop garden on the top of the compound that she had not known existed. It was warm. There were low iron chairs and a bottle of soju in an ice bucket and a plate of small savory pancakes that Sunhee had made herself. There was a view of Koreatown at night, the neon signs blurring softly into one long ribbon of red and gold, and beyond that the darker outline of the hills. They did not talk much. He poured, she drank. He refilled. She let him. At some point, without meaning to, she said, "I do not know how to go back to my old life after this." He was quiet for a long time, then he said, "Nobody does. What do they do instead? Some of them build a new one, somewhere else, with the money and the silence. And the others? The others stay." She turned the small ceramic cup slowly between her fingers. "Why do the others stay?" He looked at her. His face in the ambient light was younger than she had ever seen it. Not soft, never soft, but younger. "Because they learn," he said, "that being covered is a taste, and once you have tasted it, uncovered feels like being naked in weather." She did not answer. She drank instead. The soju burned pleasantly on the way down. She thought later, in the suite, brushing out her long hair before bed, that he had told her something important on the roof and had let her decide whether to hear it. On the 28th day, 2 days short of the 30 they had agreed on, he asked her to come down to his study after dinner. She came. She was wearing a simple black cashmere sweater and dark, loose trousers, and no jewelry except the small gold studs from that first night at the Ember Room. Her hair was in a low twist at the back of her neck. She realized on the way down the stairs, not nervous. He was standing at the window when she came in. He turned. He walked to the desk. He picked up a slim manila envelope and held it out to her. "What is this?" "Sit down first." She sat down in the leather chair across from the desk. He sat behind it. He slid the envelope across the polished wood. "Open it." She opened it. Inside there was a driver's license with her photograph and a name that was not hers. There was a passport with the same face and the same name. There was a bank card for an account she had never seen the statements of. There was a single sheet of paper with an address in a small city in Portugal and a phone number written in his handwriting. She looked at it for a long time. "Explain." "The name is real," he said. "The documents are real. The account has been active for 6 months. It has enough in it that you would not need to work for a long time, if ever. The apartment in Porto is paid through the end of the year. The number belongs to a woman named Celia who has done this before. She will meet you at the airport. She will help you settle. She has never met me. She never will." "When?" "Whenever you say. Tonight, if you like. Tomorrow. The day after. The 30th day. Any time in the next 72 hours, a car will be waiting." She did not touch the papers. She looked up at him. "Why?" "Because I said 30 days, and I keep my word. And the pictures happened, and Hanjin was in the parking lot at the wine bar last week, and the Beck people have been asking questions in the wrong rooms. Because you have already been covered longer than most people. And every additional day you stay is a day the roof is being tested harder. Because you deserve to make this choice while it is still a choice. And if I do not go..." He was quiet a long moment. "Then I need you to understand," he said, "that after the 30th day, if you are still here, it will not be because I'm asking you to stay. I have not asked. I will not ask. But it will also no longer be a fiction. Whatever you choose next, choose it clean." She sat with the papers on her lap. She thought about Porto. She had never been. She had once, in her early 20s, kept a photograph of a blue and white tiled wall from a magazine on her refrigerator for a year. without knowing where it was from, because the color made her feel calm. It had been Porto. She had learned that later in a bookstore and had been briefly, oddly moved. She thought about a small apartment with tiled floors and a window that opened onto a narrow street. She thought about a woman named Celia, meeting her at an airport with a set of keys. She thought about waking up on a Tuesday morning in a country where nobody knew what she had almost been. She thought about the library upstairs. She thought about the paper bag of ginger candy Mr. Han had left on the desk. She thought about Min Jun's small daughter on the FaceTime screen at 8 o'clock. She thought about the roof and the soju, and the sentence uncovered feels like being naked in weather. She thought about Hyun-suk's hand on that first night, entering the small space between her fingers like it had been carved for it. She thought about the word choice. Then she closed the envelope. She placed it gently on the desk between them. She slid it back across the polished wood until it stopped against his hand. "I'm not going," she said. He did not move. He did not smile. He did not in any visible way react. "I want you to understand," he said quietly, "why you are not going. I understand. Say it." She looked at him. "I'm not going," she said, "because I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not staying because I'm afraid of him. He is on a bus. He's gone. There is nothing here I am hiding from anymore." She paused. She kept her voice very even. "I am staying because I have been covered, and I have found out that I like it. And I would rather find out what that means with my eyes open than spend the rest of my life in a small apartment in Porto pretending I did not know." He was silent for a long moment. "That is dangerous," he said. "You already told me that. I'm telling you again. I heard you the first time." He reached across the desk. He picked up the envelope. He set it, without looking at it, into a drawer and closed the drawer and turned the small brass key in the lock and then set the key down on the polished wood between them, closer to her side than his. "Then the fiction ends at midnight on the 30th day," he said, "and whatever begins at 1 minute past, we begin it honestly. Yes, Ariana. Yes, you still can take that key any night you want, for as long as the account exists, which will be as long as I'm alive." She looked at the small brass key on the wood between them. She did not pick it up. She did not push it back. She left it exactly where he had set it, and she stood up, and she walked out of the study, and she went upstairs to a room whose walls she had chosen, at last, to be inside. The room she had chosen was quiet, and quiet that night was not the same thing as safe. Ariana lay on top of the emerald silk coverlet with her shoes still on, listening to the house breathe around her. Somewhere below, a clock ticked in a rhythm the whole estate obeyed. Somewhere on the floor above, a floorboard creaked under a bodyguard's weight. Somewhere in the walls, air moved through vents that had been designed by an engineer who had signed a non-disclosure and never been seen in Koreatown again. She stared at the ceiling and counted the breaths between her ribs and the ceiling molding, and she thought about the wine glass on the desk downstairs, and she thought about the way Hyun-suk had watched her walk out of the study, and she understood, with a calm that surprised her, that she was not going to sleep. She sat up. She smoothed the silk under her palms. She stood, and she walked to the window, and she pulled back one edge of the drape, and she looked down into the courtyard where 2 men in dark coats stood at opposite ends of the stone path, not speaking, not moving, only present. One of them saw the drape shift. He did not look up. He simply adjusted his stance so that his shoulders squared toward the wall directly beneath her window, and he stayed that way. She let the drape fall. She turned. She sat on the edge of the bed. She reached for the phone Min-jae had given her earlier that evening, and she held it in her palm, and she did not turn it on. Not yet. Instead, she thought about the 30 days she had accepted, and she thought about the 24 days that had passed, and she thought about the 6 days remaining, and she thought about the way Hyun-suk had said the word choose as if it were a fresh coin, still warm from the mint, still capable of being spent in either direction. Then the phone in her palm buzzed once, on its own, without being turned on. She looked at the screen. A single line of text from a number that had no name attached to it. The line said, "The Chen family sends their regards. They would like to speak with you. Alone, tomorrow. 2 o'clock. The tea house on 6th. Come without him, and you leave your ex-boyfriend's file closed. Bring him, and it opens in every paper in the city by Friday." She read it twice. She read it 3 times. She set the phone face down on the coverlet, and she pressed her palm flat against the back of it, as if that would keep whatever had entered the room from spreading. The Chen family. She had heard the name at dinner 4 nights ago, spoken by Jiwoo, the consigliere, in the careful tone he used only for names he did not enjoy pronouncing. A rival house out of the Port District, older money than the Lee family, colder money, money that had spent 3 decades learning to wait. Jiwoo had said their name, and then he had changed the subject, and she had understood that the subject change was itself a form of information. Now the Chen family knew her name. Now the Chen family knew about Travis. Now the Chen family knew, apparently, that Travis had a file that could still be opened, though Travis himself had disappeared from Koreatown so completely that even the rumor of him had gone thin. She sat very still on the coverlet, and she thought about what a file on Travis would contain. Photos, probably. Real ones this time, not the crude fakes he had leaked to the neighborhood tabloids. Something older, something from before she had ever walked into the Ember Room. Something from the years she had spent explaining to her mother and to her friends and to herself that he was going through a hard time, that he did not mean it, that he had promised. Something that would, if published, reach back through the 24 days of this new life and touch every wall she had chosen. She picked the phone up again. She turned it over. She read the line one more time. Then she stood and she walked to the door of her room and she opened it and she stepped out into the corridor. 2 guards stood at the far end. They did not move. One inclined his head by half an inch. She inclined hers back by the same amount, and she walked past them toward the staircase and she went down. The house was dim at this hour, wall sconces at long intervals. The runners on the stairs muted her heels. She reached the ground floor and she stopped, and she stood in the wide hall and she considered the study door on her left. She did not open it. Instead, she walked past it, down the corridor, to the smaller sitting room at the back of the house, the one with the 2 green leather chairs and the low table and the single lamp. She sat in one of the chairs. She placed the phone face down on the low table. She waited. She did not have to wait long. Hyun-suk appeared in the doorway 2 minutes later, still in the black shirt from earlier, sleeves rolled once at the cuff, a small ceramic cup of something steaming in his left hand. He did not look surprised to find her there. He looked, if anything, like a man who had been informed by the walls themselves that she had come downstairs. He walked in. He set the cup on the table. He sat in the second chair. He did not speak. She let the silence sit for a full 10 seconds. Then she said evenly, "I received a message." He waited, she said. "From the Chen family." His face did not move, only his eyes changed, in a way she had learned to read in the last 3 weeks, a small darkening at the center, the way a still pond changes color when a shadow crosses it from above. He said, "When?" She said, 9 minutes ago. On the phone Min-jae gave me, the one that was not turned on. He was quiet for 2 beats, then he said, "Show me." She turned the phone over. She slid it across the low table. He read the line. He read it again. He set the phone down face up. He picked up the ceramic cup. He took 1 small sip. He set the cup down. He said, "Tomorrow at 2. She said, "Yes." He said, "The tea house on 6th. She said, "Yes." He said, "Alone." She said, "Yes." He looked at the phone. He looked at her. He said, "You will not go." She said nothing. She held his eyes. He said, again, more quietly, "You will not go." She said, "May I ask a question first?" He inclined his head. Once, slow. She said, "If I do not go, what happens to the file?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "It opens. On Friday, perhaps sooner. The Chen family does not make a threat they cannot pay for." She said, "And what is in the file?" He said, "I do not know. That is the point of the file." She said, "And if the file opens, what does it cost me?" He said, "It costs you the version of yourself that walked into the Ember Room 3 weeks ago. Whatever they have, it is old and it is yours, and it will be shown to the entire city with your face beside it and my name beside your face. That is what the Chen family is buying. If you do not come to them, my name next to your worst hour." She sat with that. She let it settle in her chest. She said, "And if I do go?" He said, "You do not go alone." She said, "The message says alone." He said, "Messages say many things." She said, "If I bring you or bring anyone traceable to you, they open the file anyway. They said so. That is not a negotiation. That is a rule of the room they are inviting me into." He said, "Then we do not accept the invitation." She said, "You do not accept it. I have not yet decided." He was quiet again. His hand rested on his knee. The heavy black onyx ring on his right pinky caught the lamplight and let it go. He said, "Ariana, It was the first time in 3 weeks that he had used her first name in a room where no third person could hear it. She said, "Yes." He said, "The Chen family does not want a photograph of you. They want a photograph of me. You are the frame. Travis is the paint. I am the picture. If you walk into that tea house, you walk in as the frame around my head, and you walk out with a knife in your ribs, or you walk out engaged to a Chen cousin, or you walk out with a promise you cannot keep. There is no fourth door in that room." She said, "There is always a fourth door." He said, "Not in that room." She said, "Then I will build one." He looked at her for a long moment. He said quietly, "How?" She did not answer immediately. She reached for the ceramic cup on the table. She did not sip from it. She only held it, and she felt the heat move into her palm, and she watched the steam curl over her fingers. She said, "The Chen family thinks I am your possession. That is the entire premise of the invitation. Remove the premise and the invitation collapses." He said, "Remove it how?" She said, "By walking in as something other than yours." He said, "You are not a piece I move on a board." She said, "I know, that is exactly why this will work. Because you would not think to move me this way, and neither will they." He was silent. She said, "I will need 3 things from you, and I will need you to give them to me without asking tonight what I intend to do with them tomorrow. Because if you know, they will see it on your face when they look at the men you send to watch the block. And they will be watching for exactly that." He said, "Name them." She said, "The name of the Chen lieutenant who signed off on this message, not the family head, the lieutenant. The one who actually chose the tea house and the hour." He said, "That is one." She said, "The location of the back office of the tea house on 6th, specifically the desk, specifically the drawer on the right side of the desk. Someone in your organization has been in that back office in the last 2 years. I have listened to the way your men speak about that block. It is not a neutral block. Someone knows the room." His eyebrows lifted. 1/2 millimeter. He said, "That is 2. She said, "And the file. Whatever version of the file you can obtain in the next 15 hours. I do not need all of it. I need enough of it to know what page they will open to first, because that page is the page they will assume I am most afraid of, and I intend to walk in already carrying that page in my own hand." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You want to arrive with your own worst hour already in your fingers, so that when they set it on the table, you set it on the table first." She said, "Yes." He said, "That does not remove the knife from the room." She said, "It removes the leverage. The knife without the leverage is only a knife. Knives I have survived before." He looked at her, and she watched the small darkening at the center of his eyes give way to something else, something she had not seen in his face in 3 weeks. Not surprise, not approval, something quieter and older than either. Recognition. He said, "You understand that if this goes wrong?" She said, "I understand." He said, "You understand that if you walk out of that tea house and I am not the first face you see on the sidewalk, it is because I'm already inside the building coming down the back stairs, and there will be sound, and there will be men on the floor, and there will be no version of tomorrow morning that resembles this morning." She said, "I understand." He said, "You understand that if this goes right, they will know by Friday that the frame moved on its own, and a frame that moves on its own is not a frame anymore. It is a hand." She said, "I understand." He was quiet, then he stood. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. He did not turn around. He said over his shoulder, "The lieutenant is a man named Chen Wei-lin, second cousin to the family head, 41, ambitious, insecure about his cousin's chair, easy to flatter, terrible at hiding it. The back office of the tea house has a desk against the west wall. The drawer on the right side is locked with a small brass key that hangs on a hook behind a black and white photograph of the old Chen patriarch on the north wall. The photograph swings on a hinge. Ji Wu will have the file, or as much of it as exists in this city, on your dressing table before 6 a.m. Do not thank me. Go to sleep." He walked out. She sat in the green chair for another minute. She set the ceramic cup down. She stood. She went upstairs. She lay on the coverlet. She did not sleep. But she did close her eyes, and she did feel, for the first time since the phone had buzzed, the small, hard thing in her chest settle into a shape she could carry. The file was on her dressing table at 5:47 a.m. She read it before the sun came up. It was thinner than she had feared and thicker than she had hoped. 3 photographs, 2 documents. 1 recorded conversation on a small black flash drive she did not play, because she already knew what it contained, because she had lived through the night it had been recorded, and she did not need to hear her own voice from 4 years ago pleading with a man who no longer existed to stop. She held the flash drive in her palm for a long moment. She did not cry. She had done her crying about that night in the year that followed it, alone, in a small apartment, on a couch that had smelled like the wrong man's cologne. She had nothing left to cry about it now. She had instead a use for it. She dressed at 10, not in emerald, in cream. A cream silk blouse, soft trousers the color of wet sand, low nude heels, small pearl earrings. No jewelry on her hands except the delicate gold bracelet, hair straight down her back. No makeup except for a bare, glossed lip. She looked, in the mirror, like a woman who had come to a tea house to end an unpleasant misunderstanding with dignity. That was exactly the woman she needed to look like. She did not see Hyun-suk before she left. That had been part of the agreement. He would not be in the house when she walked out of it. He would not be on the block when she arrived. He would be precisely wherever he needed to be to appear on the sidewalk within 9 seconds of her stepping through the tea house door on the way back out. She trusted the 9 seconds. She did not need to see him to trust them. She rode to 6th in a plain car, driven by a man she had not met before, whose face she did not study. He said nothing. She said nothing. He let her out at the corner. She walked the last half block herself. The tea house had a green door. The green door had a small brass bell. She pushed the door open, and the bell rang once, high and clean, and she stepped inside. Chen Weilin was already seated at the back table. He was younger than she had expected, and softer through the jaw, and dressed in a charcoal suit that fit almost well. He rose when she entered. He gestured to the chair opposite him. He said in careful English, "Miss Prescott, thank you for coming. And for coming as we asked." She sat. She placed her small clutch on the table. She smiled, small and even. She said, "Mr. Chen, thank you for the invitation. Before we begin, may I say one thing?" He inclined his head, indulgent, already certain of the room he was inside. She said, "I am not here on behalf of Mr. Lee. I am here on behalf of myself, and I have brought something with me. May I?" She reached into the clutch. She saw 2 of his men at the far end of the room shift their weight. She moved slowly. She withdrew a plain white envelope. She placed it on the table between them. She slid it 3 inches toward him. She said, "Please, before you show me anything you have brought." He looked at the envelope. He looked at her. His smile stayed on his mouth, but something moved out of his eyes. He opened the envelope. Inside were 3 items. A photograph he recognized instantly, because it was a photograph of himself, taken 11 months earlier in a hotel room in Incheon, with a woman who was not his wife, and who was also not any of the 4 women his family suspected him of seeing. A short, handwritten note in his own handwriting on stationery from that same hotel, and a copy of a wire transfer confirmation dated 6 months earlier, moving a sum from an account that was supposed to be sealed to an account that was supposed to not exist. He looked at the 3 items for a long time. He looked up at her. She said quietly, still smiling, the small, even smile, "I was told, before I came here, that you were ambitious. I was told you were interested in your cousin's chair. I have no interest in your family. I have no interest in your chair. I have no interest even in whether any of what is in that envelope becomes a matter your cousin has to think about over breakfast. I only came here to say one thing, and then I will leave, and you will not open any file on any subject, and no photograph of me or of anyone I know will appear in any paper, and this envelope will stay in your inside pocket forever, and we will all pretend this tea was very pleasant." He did not speak. She said, "The one thing is this. I am not a frame. I am not a picture. I am not a message from Mr. Lee. I am a woman who, 3 weeks ago, was going to be hit in the face in a cigar lounge over a debt that was not hers, and who reached for the nearest hand, and who has spent the last 24 days learning very carefully what kind of hand it turned out to be. I have learned, I am still learning, and I have learned, among other things, that when a family like yours reaches for a woman like me, it is because that family does not yet understand that women like me have been reaching first quietly, our whole lives. So please, take the envelope, enjoy your tea, and do not send me another phone that turns itself on." She stood. She picked up her clutch. She did not offer her hand. Chen Weilin stood as well, slowly. His jaw worked once. Then, to her small surprise, he bowed. Not deeply, but he bowed. He said in Korean a single short phrase she did not understand. She nodded once. She turned. She walked to the green door. She pushed it open. The bell rang high and clean. She stepped onto the sidewalk. Hyun-suk was there. 9 seconds, exactly. He was not on the sidewalk itself. He was leaning against the door of a black car parked at the curb, hands in his pockets, face perfectly still. He watched her walk to him. He did not speak until she was inside the car and the door was closed. Then he said, "It went how?" She said, "It went." He said, and she said, "And Chen Weilin is going to have a very quiet lunch alone, and then he is going to burn a photograph he should have burned 11 months ago, and then he is going to write a short apologetic letter to his cousin about something else entirely. And then he is going to make sure no one in his family ever mentions my name again, or yours, or Travis's." Hyun-suk was quiet for a long moment. He looked out the window, then he looked back at her. He said, "You walked in as your own weapon." She said, "I walked in as myself. It turned out to be the same thing." He was silent. The car pulled away from the curb. Koreatown moved past the window in the pale gray light of early afternoon. She watched the street for a full block before she realized his hand had come to rest on the seat between them, palm up, open, deliberate, not asking, only offering. She looked at his hand. She looked at his face. He was watching her, and there was, again, that thing in his eyes she had seen in the sitting room the night before. Recognition. And under it now, for the first time since she had known him, something that was not calm at all. Something that was closer to awe and closer still to fear. She placed her hand in his. He closed his fingers, not around her hand, between them. He interlaced his fingers with hers, slowly, the same way he had done it in the Ember Room 3 weeks ago, when she had grabbed the wrong hand to hide from Travis. The same gesture, exactly the same gesture. Only now the room was a car, and now the audience was no one. And now the debt was not $40,000, and now the woman whose fingers he was closing his around had, 90 minutes earlier, walked alone into a room full of enemies and walked out with the enemies bowing to her. He looked at their 2 hands on the seat between them. He said very quietly, "You are mine now because you chose to be, not because you said it." She looked at their hands, and she looked at his face, and she thought about the wall she had chosen, and the room upstairs whose ceiling she had counted her breaths against, and the ceramic cup on the low table, and the flash drive she had not played, and the green door with the small brass bell, and Chen Weilin's shallow bow. She said, "Yes." He said, "Say it again." She said, "Yes." He turned his head. He looked at her. His hand did not move. He said, "There is one more thing." She said, "I know." She lifted her free hand. Slowly, she reached across the small space between them. She placed her palm, flat and warm, against the left side of his neck, over the place where the fine black lines of the dragon disappeared beneath the open collar of his shirt. She let her hand rest there. She felt the pulse under her palm. Steady, but not slow. Not slow at all. She said, "I know." He closed his eyes for a single second. Then he opened them. The car turned onto the wide avenue that led back to the estate. The sun broke, briefly, through the gray. Her hand stayed where it was. She did not move it for a long time. The avenue back to the estate was the last quiet stretch of road Ariana would have for a long time. She did not know it yet. She only knew that the leather under her palm had gone warm from her own skin, and that Hyun-suk, in the seat beside her, had not spoken since the driver had pulled away from the curb outside the tea house on 6th. She had gone to the tea house alone. She had gone against every instinct the last 24 days had trained into her, and she had gone anyway because the message had said alone, and because she had understood, sitting in the green leather chair at 3 a.m. with Hyun-suk watching her from the other chair, that the only way to keep the file on Travis closed was to walk into the Chen family's front room by herself. Hyun-suk had let her go. He had not liked it. His face had not moved when she had said it, but she had seen the small darkening at the center of his eyes, the same darkening the shadow makes on a pond, and she had seen his jaw set once, quickly, and then relax. He had said only one sentence in reply. He had said, "Then you will walk in with a name that everyone in that room already fears, and you will not need me in the room to say it." She had walked in with that name. She had walked back out with something else. Now the car was moving through the low gray hour before dawn, and the streetlights were still on, and her hand was still on the leather. And the small, folded square of paper the Chen negotiator had pressed into her palm at the door was hidden inside the clutch on her lap. She had not looked at it yet. She had not opened it in the tea house because the negotiator had said softly, "Read it when you are alone. Read it before you show it to him. That is the only mercy we will offer you." Mercy. The Chen family had said mercy. She sat very still, and she watched the streetlights slide past the window, and she felt the paper inside the clutch as if it were something alive. Hyun-suk said, without turning his head, "You will tell me what they wanted." She said, "Yes." He said, "Now." She said, "Not yet." His shoulders did not shift. His hand resting on his own thigh did not close. but the air inside the car changed. The way the air changes in a room when a door somewhere else in the house has quietly been shut. He said, "Ariana." She turned her face toward him. She had learned in 24 days that turning her face toward him was itself a form of speech. She said, "I'm going to read something first, then I'm going to tell you. I need 3 minutes." He looked at her for a long moment, then he inclined his head by half an inch, the same half inch the guards used, and he turned his face back to the window, and he waited. She opened the clutch. She took out the folded square of paper. She unfolded it in her lap below the line of the window so that the driver could not see her hands in the mirror. It was a photograph. It was a photograph of Travis. Travis, alive, sitting on the edge of a narrow bed in a room she did not recognize. In a light that came from a single bare bulb above his head. His hair had grown out. His beard had grown in. He had a bandage across the bridge of his nose and a bruise the color of old wine down the left side of his jaw. He was holding in both hands a folded newspaper, and the date on the newspaper, though her eyes could not read it at this distance in this light, had been circled in red ink. Below the photograph, in small, careful handwriting, were 3 lines. The first line said, "He is alive. He is with us. He has been with us for 11 days. The second line said, "He has told us everything he knows about you, every year, every scar, every night you never told your mother about." The third line said, "We will trade him back to Lee Hyun-suk on Friday at noon at the port. In exchange, you will walk out of the estate at midnight tonight and come to us alone. If you do not come, we will not trade Travis. We will publish him. And every wall he touches, you touch too." She read the 3 lines once. She read them again. She folded the paper in half. She folded it again. She placed it back inside the clutch. She closed the clutch. She rested her hand on top of it, and she looked out the window, and she watched a delivery truck pass in the other direction, and she counted silently to 10. Then she said, "They have Travis." Hyun-suk did not move. She said, "They have had him for 11 days. He has been telling them things. About me, things from before." Hyun-suk said, "How do you know?" She said, "They sent a photograph. Newspaper in his hands, the date circled." Hyun-suk was quiet for a long moment, then he said, "What do they want?" She said, "They want me to walk out of your house at midnight tonight and come to them alone. In exchange, they will hand Travis back to you on Friday at the port. If I do not go, they publish Travis. Everything he knows." The car turned a corner. The light in the cabin changed by a shade. Hyun-suk said evenly, "That is not a negotiation." She said, "No." He said, "That is a demand." She said, "Yes." He said, "You will not go." She said, "I know." He said, "Say it out loud." She said, "I will not go." He said, "Good." They rode in silence for 2 blocks. Then he said, more softly, "What did they promise you, if you did?" She said, "Nothing. They did not promise. They only threatened. That is how I knew it was real." He looked at her again. This time, the darkening at the center of his eyes was different. It was not the shadow of the pond. It was the way iron looks the second before it goes into the fire. He said, "You understood the shape of it before you were out of the room." She said, "Yes." He said, "Good." She said, "Hyun-suk." He said, "Yes." She said, "There is a 4th line." He was quiet for a very long moment. Then he said, "Read it to me." She opened the clutch again. She unfolded the paper. She had not lied to him. There was a 4th line in the same careful handwriting below the 3rd. She had seen it the first time. She had not been ready to say it out loud yet. She said it out loud now. She said, "The 4th line says, 'You should also know that one of the 3 captains who witnessed your claim in the Ember Room has already accepted our offer. He will not stand for you on Friday. Ask him yourself. Ask him the color of his own tie tonight." The car stopped at a red light. Hyun-suk did not move for the length of the light. The light changed. The car moved forward. He said, "Which captain?" She said, "They did not name him." He said, "They did not need to." She said, "No." He said, "There were 3 men in that room besides me. Kang, Du, Hwang. One of them signed on the night you walked in wearing green. One of them is preparing to sign against me now." She said, "Yes." He said, "You understand what this means." She said, "It means your claim on me is only as strong as the men who witnessed it. If one of them lifts his hand off the table, the claim is not gone, but it is bleeding." He said, "Yes." She said, "It means the Chen family did not come for me. They came for the crack in the room. I am only the tool they are using to widen it." He said, "It's yes." She said, "It means Travis is bait for me, and I am bait for the captain, and the captain is bait for you." He said, "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, It means the person who is really at the bottom of the well tonight is not me. He turned his head. He looked at her fully for the first time since she had entered the car. He said, "Say that again." She said, "The person who is really at the bottom of the well tonight is not me. It is you. They came for you, through me, through the captain, through Travis. All three of us are corridors they built to reach you. I am only the one they let see the map." The car turned onto the wide avenue that led back to the estate. The gate ahead was still closed. The two guards at the pillars had not yet seen the car. There were, she guessed, 40 seconds before the gate opened and the world outside this cabin ended. Hyun-suk said quietly, "Then we have 40 seconds. She said, "Yes." He said, "In 40 seconds, you and I will decide what happens next. Not the estate, not Jiwoo, not Minjae. You and I, here, in this car, before the gate opens." She said, "Yes." He said, "Speak first." She had not expected that. 24 days, and he had never once told her to speak first. He had told her to listen and to consider and to sit and to wait. He had never once, in any room, on any question, said the word "speak first." She spoke first. She said, "I have 3 moves. Tell me if I'm wrong." He said, "Go." She said, "Move 1. I do not walk out at midnight. That is not a decision. That is a floor. Whatever else we do, that stays true. If I walk out at midnight, they win 2 things. They get me, and they take away the only witness who understands what I just told you." He said, "Yes." She said, "Move 2. We do not tell the estate about the 4th line yet. Not Jiwoo, not Minjae, not your sister. Because if one of the 3 captains has already turned, we do not know how far the tremor has spread inside the walls. Anyone we tell in the next 12 hours is either the leak or a possible leak. So we hold the 4th line between you and me. That includes Jiwoo. Especially Jiwoo, because he is the one everyone trusts, which means he is the one worth turning." He said, "Yes." She said, "Move 3. We use the captain." He said, "Explain." She said, "The Chen family told me which captain has turned in the sense that they told me one has. They did not name him. But they told me to ask the color of his tie tonight. That means the 3 captains have been asked to wear a specific color to something tonight. A meeting, a dinner. Some room where the 3 of them will be together and where the color of a tie will be a signal to somebody outside the room. Probably to a Chen watcher, probably to confirm the deal." He was quiet. She said, "So we find the room. We find the color. We do not confront the captain. We let the Chen watcher see the color. We let the confirmation land, then we own the confirmation. The captain thinks he's signing against you and getting away with it. The Chen family thinks they have bought him. And you know, before either of them knows you know, exactly which one of the 3 has bent his back." He was quiet for another 2 seconds. Then he said, "Ariana." She said, "Yes." He said, "That is the move I would have made." She said, "I know." He said, "How did you know?" She said, "Because you told me, on the 4th day, that the strongest play in a room where a traitor exists is not to expose the traitor. It is to let the traitor believe he is still hidden while you move around him. You said it while you were pouring wine. I did not think you were teaching me. I thought you were talking to yourself." He said, "I was doing both." The car reached the gate. The gate opened. The car slid through. The gate closed behind them. He said, before the driver could pull up to the front steps, "One more thing before we go inside." She said, "Yes." He said, "You went to that tea house alone." She said, "Yes." He said, "You walked into a room full of men who were prepared to threaten you, and you walked out with a photograph and a paper and a way to keep me from bleeding to death tonight." She said, "Yes." He said, "Say what that means." She said, "I know what you want me to say." He said, "Say it anyway." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It means I am not being protected anymore. It means I am protecting." He said, "Yes." She said, "It means the shape of us has changed." He said, "Yes." She said, "It means when I said I was staying because I was addicted to the taste of the room, that was true then. It is not the only true thing anymore." He said, "Say the other true thing." She said, "I am staying because there is a version of you that will not survive tonight without me in the room. And I am not willing to find out what a version of the world without that version of you looks like." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he leaned across the seat. He did not kiss her. He took her right hand, the one that had been resting on top of the clutch, and he laced his fingers through hers. The way he had laced them in the Ember Room on the first night, deliberately, publicly, with the same unhurried finality. Except this time, there was no audience. There was only the 2 of them, and the driver looking straight ahead at the front steps of the house and the pale gray sky above the roof. He said, "Then we go inside, and we lie to everyone who is not you and me, and we find the room, and we find the color. And when we come out the other side of Friday, we come out with 3 captains at the table and a Chen family without a doorway." "Yes," she said. "Yes." The car stopped at the steps. The driver got out. He opened her door first. She did not release Hyun-suk's hand until she was on the gravel. Even then, she released it last, letting her fingers slide slowly out of his the way a rope is let out over the edge of a boat. Inside the house, it was already 6 in the morning. Ji-woo, the consigliere, was standing at the foot of the staircase with a tablet in his hand and 2 folders under his arm, and an expression on his face that said he had been waiting since 4. Min-jae, in a plain black suit, stood 2 steps behind him, hands folded. Ji-woo said, "You went out." Hyun-suk said, "I did." Ji-woo said, "You went out and you took her with you." Hyun-suk said, "She took me." Ji-woo's eyes moved to Ariana. For the length of one breath she saw, or thought she saw, something behind his careful lawyer face that had not been there on any of the previous mornings. Not suspicion, not hostility, something more like calculation, held very still, so still that if she had not been watching for it after what the Chen family had told her, she would have missed it. She let her face show nothing. She let herself smile, the small, tired smile of a woman who had spent the night in a car and now wanted a shower. She said, "Good morning, Ji-woo." Ji-woo said, "Good morning." She let the smile stay. She walked past him. She did not look at Min-jae. She went up the stairs. Behind her, she heard Hyun-suk say, in a voice that was calm and even, and gave away nothing, "Come to the study in 10 minutes. Bring the movement reports from last night. And the guest list for the Hwang engagement dinner tonight. All 3 captains are attending, yes?" Ji-woo said, "All 3. Hyun-suk said, "Good." She did not turn on the landing. She did not look back down. She kept walking, one hand on the banister, one hand on the clutch. She walked to her room. She closed the door. She locked it. She sat on the edge of the bed. She placed the clutch beside her. She placed her hands flat on her thighs. She stared at the wall opposite her, and she felt, for the first time in 24 days, the taste at the back of her mouth that was not the taste of being protected. It was the taste of protecting. It was, she understood with a calm that shocked her, the same taste, only a shade darker, only a shade sharper, only a shade closer to the thing at the center of her that she had been circling since the night she had grabbed the wrong hand in the ember room. She lay down on top of the emerald coverlet again. She did not sleep. She did not intend to sleep. She only lay there, and she looked at the ceiling, and she thought about the 3 captains and their ties, and she thought about the port on Friday, and she thought about the 4th line on the paper, and she thought about Travis, alive, holding a newspaper under a bare bulb in a room she did not recognize. She thought about him for a long time. She had loved him once. She had told her mother she loved him. She had told her friends she loved him. She had told herself she loved him even on the nights when she had washed the blood off the corner of her own mouth in the bathroom of the apartment they had shared. She had loved him the way a young woman loves a fire she does not yet understand is burning her house down. She did not love him now, but she felt lying there an old faint gravity, the pull of the years before she had walked into any ember room, before she had worn any emerald dress. She felt him tug at her, from a room she did not know, in a city that had swallowed him, on a Friday that was not yet here. She would not walk out at midnight. She had told Hyun-suk that. She had meant it. She would not walk out at midnight, not for Travis, not for the Chen family, not for the ghost of the woman she had been on the other side of that fire. But she would be at the port on Friday. She would be at the port on Friday, and she would decide, in the 10 seconds between the moment Travis was walked out of the Chen vehicle and the moment he was walked into whatever Hyun-suk had prepared for him, whether the last thing she owed the version of herself who had loved him was mercy, or whether the last thing she owed her was silence. She did not know yet. She lay on the coverlet in the growing gray light, and she did not know yet. And she understood that not knowing was itself the bottom of the well. Not the Chen family, not the turned captain, not the 4th line, not Travis alive in a room with a bare bulb. The bottom of the well was the small, hollow place inside her that still had a vote and had not yet cast it, and would have to cast it before Friday at noon at the port. She closed her eyes. She did not sleep. She listened to the clock downstairs tick in the rhythm the whole estate obeyed. She listened to the floorboard above her creak under the guard's weight. She listened to the air move through the vents that had been designed by an engineer who had disappeared. She listened to the house breathe around her. She listened for a very long time. Somewhere below, in the study, Hyun-suk was already sitting with Ji-woo, taking the movement reports, taking the guest list, asking about the ties. Somewhere in Koreatown, a captain was choosing what to wear to a dinner and did not know that the color of his own tie had already been read to a woman in a car. Somewhere in a room she did not know, Travis was holding a newspaper for the second photograph of the day, and somewhere, closer than all of them, at the center of her own chest, the small, hollow place waited for her vote. She opened her eyes. The ceiling was the same ceiling it had been at 3 a.m. The house was the same house. The dress was the same dress. She was not the same woman. She sat up. She took off the emerald dress at last. She hung it on the door of the closet, and she stood in front of the mirror for a moment in only her slip, and she looked at herself, and she saw a woman she did not entirely recognize looking back. The woman in the mirror had steadier eyes than she remembered. The woman in the mirror had a smaller mouth. The woman in the mirror had, she noticed, dropped her hands to her sides in a way that mirrored almost exactly the way Hyun-suk stood when he was thinking. She turned away from the mirror. She walked to the closet. She chose from a row of dresses that had been delivered without her asking a plain black one. Long sleeves, high neck, nothing gold. She dressed. She braided her long, jet black hair back from her face in a single heavy plait down her spine. She washed her mouth. She washed her hands. She put on flat black shoes. Then she walked to the door of her room. She unlocked it. She opened it. She stepped into the corridor. The 2 guards at the far end did not move. One inclined his head. She inclined hers. She walked past them toward the staircase. She went down. She did not go to the study. She went instead to the small sitting room at the back of the house, the one with the 2 green leather chairs and the low table and the single lamp. She sat in the same chair she had sat in at 3 a.m. She placed her hands on the arms of the chair. She waited. She did not have to wait long. Hyun-suk appeared in the doorway 2 minutes later. He had a folder in his hand. He looked at her in the plain black dress with the heavy plait down her spine and the flat black shoes, and something in his face, just under the calm, moved. He closed the door behind him. He walked in. He sat in the other chair. He set the folder on the table between them. He said, "Kang." She said, "The captain." He said, "Yes, the color is dark blue. The dinner is at 8. The port is Friday at noon. We have until then." She said, "Then we begin." He said, "Yes." The house breathed around them. Outside, the pale gray sky was beginning at last to turn toward morning. Inside, at the bottom of the well, in the small, quiet room with the green leather chairs, they began. The small, quiet room with the green leather chairs had a low table between them, and on the low table there was a lacquered tray, and on the tray there were 2 small porcelain cups and a squat iron pot, and a single sheet of cream paper folded in thirds. Ariana saw the paper first. She always saw paper first now. 30 days had taught her that. Hyun-suk did not sit immediately. He stood behind the chair across from hers, one hand resting on the high leather back, and he watched her the way he had watched her from across the ember room on the first night, before either of them had a name for what they were about to become. Careful, unhurried, attentive to a thing that had not yet decided which shape it wanted to take. "Sit," he said. She sat. Her hands folded themselves in her lap without her asking. That was new, too. 30 days ago, her hands had been loud things, honest things, quick to gesture and quicker to fidget. Somewhere in the last month they had learned to be quiet. She did not know if the quiet was a gift or a warning. He poured. The tea steamed pale amber into the small cup, and he pushed the cup across the table with 2 fingers. He did not pour a cup for himself. "Drink," he said. "It is not medicine. It is genmaicha. My sister sent it from Kyoto last week." She lifted the cup. The porcelain was warm, and the smell of the toasted rice was clean and simple, and for a reason she could not name, made her want to cry. She did not cry. She drank. He watched her drink. When she set the cup down, he unfolded the cream paper and laid it flat on the low table so that she could read it right side up. She let her eyes travel across the top line and stop. The first line was a name. It was not her name. Amara Nicole Kingston, born Charleston, South Carolina, Bachelor of Arts, University of Georgia. Employed as marketing consultant, boutique firm, Lisbon, Portugal. She kept her face still. 30 days had taught her that too. "There is an apartment," he said. His voice was the same voice he had used in the armored car on the way home from the Ember Room on the first night when he had explained the code. Level, bare of ornament. Not gentle exactly, but not cruel either. 2nd floor, Chiado, 2 windows onto the street and a small balcony onto the courtyard. The rent is paid for 3 years, utilities included. She did not look up from the paper. "There is a bank account," he said. "Portuguese national. The balance will be 4 million euros by the time you land. The paperwork is clean. It will read as an inheritance from a paternal aunt. The aunt existed. Her name was Delphine. She left the money. That part is true. She turned the paper over. The back of the paper had a flight number and a departure time and a set of terminal instructions in his handwriting. His handwriting was small and slanted and unexpectedly beautiful. "There is a passport," he said. "It is at the townhouse in a black leather folder in the top drawer of the desk in the library. You know the drawer. You have opened it before." She had opened it once on the 9th day, looking for a fountain pen. And she had seen the folder and understood without being told that she was not meant to open it, and she had closed the drawer and never mentioned it. He had known. Of course he had known. "There is a car," he said. "It will meet you at Umberto Delgado. The driver's name is Rui. He has worked for the family for 22 years. He does not speak to anyone about his passengers. He will take you to the apartment. He will hand you the keys. He will leave. You will not see him again unless you ask for him." She set the paper down. "And you," she said. Her voice came out lower than she had expected. "Where are you in this?" "Nowhere," he said. She looked up at last. He had not moved. His hand was still on the leather back of the chair. His shoulders had the same still line they always had. The dragon at the side of his neck was black and clean under the top edge of his collar, and his face was the face he had shown her 100 times over 30 days, the face that never asked for a thing. "There is no watcher outside the apartment," he said. "There is no man in the cafe across the street. There is no phone in the drawer that will ring in a week to check on you. If you take the flight, the file is closed. You will not hear from me. You will not be looked at. The Chen family does not know the name Amara Kingston and will not learn it. The Red Line debt was collected in full 96 hours ago. Travis Mercer is in a hospital bed in Modesto with a tube in his throat and no memory of the last 6 weeks and no reason to think of you again. That part is finished. You are free." She heard the words. She heard each one land. She did not speak. He waited. He was very good at waiting. She had learned that too. "When?" she said finally. "The flight is at 6:40 this evening," he said. "From Van Nuys, private. You will be in Lisbon Wednesday morning local time. The keys to the apartment will be in your hand before noon." She did the arithmetic without meaning to. 14 hours. She had 14 hours to become Amara Nicole Kingston of Charleston, South Carolina, and to forget the woman in the green silk dress who had walked into the Ember Room 30 days ago and grabbed the wrong hand. 14 hours. "Why," she said, "why the offer?" "Yes." He was quiet a long moment. Outside the small window at the end of the room, the sky had gone from pale gray to a thin, hesitant pink. She could hear a bird somewhere in the garden. A single bird. She had not known the estate had birds. "Because 30 days is the code," he said. "Because I made the claim in public, and the claim was witnessed, and the claim carried a term, and the term is up at sunrise. And the code says that at sunrise on the 31st day, the woman is asked. Not the day before, not the day after. Today." "Asked what?" "Asked if she stays. And if she stays." He looked at her for a long moment before he answered. "Then it is not a claim anymore," he said. "Then it is a marriage, not the ceremony. The ceremony comes later or does not come at all. That is a small thing. I mean the shape. The shape becomes permanent. The shape becomes a thing the whole house is built on. There is no 31st day after this. There is no offer of a Lisbon apartment on the 60th day. There is no exit. The door I'm opening now closes at sunrise, and it does not open again." She felt the room tilt very slightly. Not the room. Her chest. The small room inside her chest where she had been keeping the last 30 days. The small locked room. The one she had not opened for herself yet. She kept her hands folded. "And if I go," she said, "then you go. That is all. That is all. No message, no last look, no package delivered to the apartment on the 6th day of the first month. None." "You will not think of me." He was silent. "Answer," she said. "I will think of you," he said. "That is not your problem. That is mine. I will not act on it. You will not know. That is what the offer is. That is what makes it clean." She lowered her eyes to the porcelain cup on the low table. She lifted the cup and drank the rest of the tea. "Ask me," she said. He did not smile. He never smiled. But something in the still line of his mouth softened a fraction, and she saw it, because 30 days had taught her his face the way a musician learns an instrument. "Ariana Prescott," he said. He said her name the way he had said it in the car on the first night, careful with each syllable as if the name were made of glass. The claim I made in the Ember Room on the 9th of the month was witnessed by 3 captains and is irreversible in the code of my house. The term of the claim was 30 days. The term ends at sunrise. It is sunrise. I am asking, do you stay? She heard the question and let it sit inside her, and she waited for the answer to arrive because she wanted it to be honest, because she owed him honesty, if she owed him nothing else, because 30 days had bought her at least that. The answer arrived from a place she had not expected. It did not come from fear. That surprised her. Fear had been the loudest voice inside her for 30 days, and now, at the moment of the question, fear was quiet. Fear had gone to sit in the corner of the small locked room and had folded its hands and had chosen, for once in her life, to shut up. It did not come from love. She was careful about that word. 30 days was not enough time for that word. Whatever it was that had moved between them at the low table in the library on the 22nd night, when he had put the file on Travis in front of her and had not asked her to be grateful, whatever that had been, it was not yet the word love. She would not lie to him, and she would not lie to herself. It came from a third place. It came from the memory of the way her own hand had lifted, of its own accord, and had taken the strong hand at the base of the yellow rose bush in the greenhouse on the 16th morning, the hand that had been offered to steady her over the wet stone, and how she had taken the hand without thinking, without calculating, without any of the small, hard machinery that had run her life since she was 17 years old. She had taken the hand because she had wanted to take it. She had not wanted to take a hand like that since she was a girl. She had forgotten she could want. Travis had trained the wanting out of her over 5 years the way a man trains a dog out of chasing rabbits, patiently and cruelly, and she had not known the wanting was gone until she had felt it come back in a greenhouse at 7 in the morning over a yellow rose. That was what she was answering to now. Not the townhouse, not the cardless card, not the sister with the ivory reading glasses, or the driver with the 22 years of silence, or the 4 conciliaires sitting in the small dining room at 11 at night waiting for her to walk in and be a wife. Not even the man across the low table from her, though the man was part of it, because the man had been the shape the wanting had chosen to fill. She was answering to the wanting. The wanting was hers. It had been hers before she had met him, and it would be hers if she got on the plane at 6:40 and drank coffee at a small round table in Chateau on Wednesday morning. But she knew, with a clarity that did not need to be argued, that if she got on the plane, the wanting would go back into the small locked room and would not come out again, because there would be no one on the other side of it. No still figure in the doorway of a library at 11 at night. No man to pour tea at sunrise without asking whether she took sugar, because he had learned on the 4th morning that she did not. The wanting needed a witness. It had found one. She looked up. "I stay," she said. He did not move for a moment. Then he moved once, and it was the smallest movement she had seen from him in 30 days. His hand lifted off the leather back of the chair, and he set it down flat on the low table, palm up, an inch from her cup. He did not ask. She lifted her own hand and put it in his, and let her fingers rest across his palm. His fingers did not close. He was waiting for her to close hers. She closed hers. The lace of their fingers was the same lace as the Ember Room, 30 days ago, when she had grabbed the wrong hand to hide from her ex. It was the same weave, but the weight of it was different. 30 days ago, the lace had been a shield. Now it was a signature. He looked at their hands for a long moment, then he looked up at her face. "Say it again," he said. His voice was very low. "Not for me, for the room. The room needs to hear it." She understood. There were no captains here. But the code was in the walls of this house the way the mortar was, and the walls were listening, and if she said the word once, she said it to him, but if she said it twice, she said it to the house, and the house was what would hold her from now on. "I stay," she said. The room held it. Outside the small window, the pink had begun to warm at the edges to a shy, promising gold. Somewhere in the garden, the single bird had been joined by a second. She could hear both of them now. He raised her hand to his mouth and pressed his mouth once to the inside of her wrist, over the pulse, and set the hand back down on the table without letting go of it. "Then it is done," he said. "It is done. There will be no offer at 60 days. There will be no offer at a year. If you want to leave after this, you will leave, and I will not stop you. But there will be no door I open for you. This was the door. The door is closed. I understand. The house will treat you differently from tomorrow. You will notice. Min Jung will begin to defer to you in the small matters of the household because you outrank her now in the shape of things. The conciliere will bring the ledgers to the small dining room and lay them open in front of you at 11 at night, and you will begin to read them. You will not have to read them well. You will only have to be present when they are read. The presence is what matters. The presence is the seal. I understand. The captains will come to be introduced. Not the 4 you have met, the other 17. They will come one by one over the next month, and each one will bow, and each one will take his cup of tea from your hand and not from mine, and each one will leave knowing what he saw. That is how the seal is set. There is no ceremony beyond this. This is the ceremony. I understand. He was quiet a moment. The rival houses will know by tonight, he said. The Chen family will know by breakfast. The Ito faction in San Francisco will know by lunch. The Ruiz cartel in Sinaloa will know by dinner. There will be tests. There will be men in the cafe across the street from the coffee shop where you like to sit on Tuesday afternoons. There will be phone calls to your old number that we have kept live for exactly this reason. There will be a woman who approaches you in the produce aisle at the market on La Brea and calls you by your first name as if she has known you since college. She will not have, you will not know her. You will look at her calmly and you will not answer, and you will walk to the car and Byung-ho will drive you home. That is the only thing you have to do. Look, do not answer. Walk to the car. I understand. There will be a night, he said, in the first 6 weeks when the phone rings at 3 a.m. in the library and you are the one who answers because I am not there. The voice on the other end will be calm and it will use my name. It will say a thing designed to make you afraid. You will listen without speaking, and you will write down every word on the pad on the desk, and you will hang up and you will wait for me. That is all you will do. You will not call anyone. You will not leave the library. You will wait. I will come. You will come. I will come. He looked at her a long moment. Do you have a question? He said. She thought about it. She had 100 questions. She would ask them, but not now. Now was for the seal. Only one, she said. Ask. When you claimed me in the Ember Room, she said, when you took my hand and said the words to the 3 captains, did you know then? Know what? That you would offer me the door at 30 days. He looked at her a long moment. Then he did the thing he almost never did. He answered a question with the whole truth, without shaping it first, without hiding the corners. No, he said. I made the claim to save you from Travis. I made it because I was in the room and the room asked to be used and the code allowed it. I did not intend the door. The door came on the 7th day when I watched you eat breakfast in the small courtyard by yourself and understood that I had put a woman in a cage without asking whether she wanted the cage. The door was the only honest thing I could do. I did not know until this morning whether I wanted you to take it. And now I know. What do you know? That I did not want you to take it, that I would have let you take it, that the difference between those 2 sentences is the whole reason the code exists. She heard the answer and let it sit inside her and understood for the first time in 30 days why the man across the low table from her had built the life he had built. He had built it because he was a man who could not be trusted to be gentle with the wanting of others, and the code was the thing he had put between himself and that untrustworthiness. And the code had held because he had made it hold at the cost of every soft thing he might have said in the last 30 days and had not said. She lifted his hand, his whole hand. She turned it over in hers so that the palm was up again, and she pressed her own palm flat against his so that the 2 palms were one shape, and she held them there. Then the code did its job, she said, and so did you. He closed his eyes for one moment, only one. She saw it because 30 days had taught her what to look for. Then he opened his eyes and the still line of his face was back and the still line was hers now, from this morning forward, in a way it had not been at 11 the night before. Come, he said. He stood. He drew her up with him by the hand, still laced, still one shape. The house is waking. Min Jung will bring breakfast to the small courtyard in 20 minutes. She will bring it for 2. She has been bringing it for 2 for 11 days now, since she decided in her own mind what your answer would be. I did not tell her to. She decided she was right. Ariana laughed. It came out small and surprised, the first small surprised laugh she had made in the room with the green leather chairs, the first laugh she realized since the 17th morning when he had said a dry thing about the peonies. The laugh felt like a coin dropped into a well. She heard it hit the water somewhere far below her. Of course she was, Ariana said. She is usually right. I noticed. He led her to the door. At the door he stopped and turned her gently by the shoulders so that she was facing him, and he looked at her for a long moment in the pale gold light that was now coming through the small window and was falling across the side of her face. You are Mrs. Lee now, he said. He said it quietly. He said it as a fact, not a claim. Not in a courthouse, not on a piece of paper, in the walls know. From now on, when you walk through this house, you are walking through your house. When you sit at the head of the small dining table, you are sitting in your seat. When you open the drawer in the library with the black leather folder, you are opening your drawer. Nothing in this compound belongs to me that does not also belong to you from this morning. Do you hear me? I hear you. Say it back. I am Mrs. Lee, she said. The walls know. The walls know. He opened the door. The house was awake. Somewhere on the ground floor, a kettle was on. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked under Min Jung's careful step. Somewhere in the far kitchen, the cook was already at the block with her knife, working through the ginger for the morning broth. Ariana heard each sound and heard for the first time that she was hearing them from the inside. From the center of the small, warm animal of the house, not from the edge where the visitor sits. She stepped through the door on his arm. The hallway smelled of the polished wood of the floor and the faint, clean smoke of the tea and the yellow rose that Min Jung had placed in the small vase on the console 2 mornings ago and had not yet replaced because Ariana had asked her quietly to leave it until it dropped its last petal on its own. The rose had 1 petal left. Ariana looked at the petal as she passed the console and understood that today was the day it would fall. She was ready for it to fall. She walked toward the small courtyard and the breakfast for 2, and her hand was in his hand, and the lace of their fingers was the seal, and the seal was set, and the code had done its job. And the woman in the green silk dress from 30 days ago was somewhere behind her, quietly setting down the shield she had picked up in the ember room and walking away from it without looking back. Ariana did not look back either. She walked into the pale gold light of the courtyard on the arm of the man whose house was now her house, and she sat down at the small round table under the fig tree, and Min Jung came out with the tray and did not meet her eyes but bowed a fraction lower than she had bowed the morning before. And Ariana understood the bow and returned it with the smallest inclination of her own head, and the bow was received, and the seal was seen, and the day began. She lifted the small porcelain cup that Min Jung had set before her, and she drank the first sip of tea of the first morning of the rest of her life, and outside the walls of the compound the city of Los Angeles was already, without knowing it, arranging itself around the new fact of her. The fact was quiet. The fact was hers. The fact was that the woman who had grabbed the wrong hand in the ember room on the 9th of the month had, on the 11th of the following month, at sunrise, in a small room with 2 green leather chairs and a lacquered tray and a single sheet of cream paper folded in thirds, chosen freely and without coercion and without fear to keep the hand she had grabbed. She had chosen the hand had chosen her back. The petal on the console in the hallway, the last petal of the yellow rose, chose that moment to release itself from the calyx and to fall, without sound, onto the polished wood of the console, and to lie there, small and gold and finished, until Min Jung, in her own time, would come by with a soft cloth and lift it, and carry it out into the garden, and lay it at the base of the bush where the rose had first been cut, and the garden would receive it, and the day, the first true day of the new shape, would go on. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever grabbed the wrong hand in the wrong room and discovered it was the only hand that would never let go? Have you ever been claimed by someone dangerous and realized weeks later that the danger was never pointed at you? What would you have chosen on day 30? The clean way out or the man who taught you what it feels like to be protected? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about chosen loyalty, silent power, and dignity restored in the shadows, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.